I, for instance, didn't have a single, not one male in my life growing up. I had aunts, I had my mother, I had my grandmother. I had no man to look up to when I was growing up. And I know there's a lot of people, a lot of especially black individuals, who are struggling with the same thing. Disagree that you can feel like a strong desire for an intimate partner but not have it, and that could make you feel lonely?
Yeah, of course, it can make you feel lonely, but that doesn't mean that getting that is going to solve your problem.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for coming. And let's start.
Is audio better now?
The man who inspired this panel, Tegma. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? I think that these conversations devolve too much into, what society isn't giving men, what women aren't giving men. And it's a criticism of everybody else but what men can do to help their own situation. So I want to at least try to, touch on what men can do individually, if anything, to maybe better their position and be less lonely. What are some of the thoughts that men might be having that become behaviors that drive their own loneliness, that isolate themselves? And then, of course, maybe touch on some of the cultural things that drive this issue as well.
Okay, well, thanks for being here, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we go. Boots, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. The panel was framed as sort of is this something that's important to talk about? And I think that when we're talking about like societal prescriptions and stuff, like, no, it's not important to talk about. It is really important for every individual man, obviously, but as like a broader, like, every sort of loneliness cannot be like picked apart and said, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. It's like, it's pointless to do it like that. So like, yes, men should be less lonely. No, it's not something that we can
Rule 7. I forgot to change this sub over to Kick.
And also, I think that a lot of the talk about men's loneliness relies on women being the solution to their loneliness. And that's something that really bothers me, that you do, Wick, actually. So.
We'll talk about it as we go. Fair enough. I am always a welcoming of
Malik.
But let's get to the other
Malik.
guests before we get into
Get out of here with the
Brittany
chatter.
Simon, hello.
Hi. Okay, I've talked about this at length on my channel, and I really do think that at the end of the day, we're dealing with tool gathering, the tools we give ourselves when we're being introspective, and then the tools we gather from society. So it's an individual problem, and it's always a society.
Don't call me that shit. You haven't earned that.
Because both impact the other. You can't have one without the other. So ultimately, it's not women's fault, it's not men's fault, it's society's fault, which I guess you could fit into those two categories if we're going to ignore their genders. And then it's the individuals.
At this point, I'm a taken man.
To seek out their joy through gathering tools. And I don't think people are as motivated as they claim to be. I think they just like to complain.
People do like to complain.
Man
I agree,
streaking in the
and I
streets.
thank you for being here, and we will get into it as we go. Next up, friend of the channel, Ahrelevant. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Wick. So on the topic of male loneliness, I think there is individual things that we can do, like on an interpersonal level and things like that, but I also think there's societal solutions. I think there are things that we can do as a society to help bolster men, to be able to foster not only deeper friendships between men, but also women, and also to help those friendships not erode. It's a multitude of different things, so I'm not going to get too specific until we really get into it, but I think that it's multifaceted. I think there's a lot of prescriptions there.
Okay. I guess I'll just start off with asking, right? Like, why don't women have any responsibility here, right? Boots, you mentioned that women shouldn't be a part of the solution, shouldn't be a solution. Well, why not? Why don't they have any kind of
Great starting question. You're breathing. Oh.
Because
Thank you for reminding me.
somebody else is not responsible for your feelings. You're responsible for your feelings. If men rely on women to reinforce them and help them form their identity, that's not women's problem. That's something that men have to handle on their own.
What do the rest of you
Is
think?
this, oh, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with this. I think that we live pretty symbiotically, and unfortunately, even women, their visions of themselves is influenced by men's perception of them, right? If men in mass are believing women are like whores for having a body count of more than one and things like that, we can't just go like, well, women, that's your fault if you feel bad about that. We like, no, our perception of each other influences our not only our self-esteem but our perception of ourselves and other people around us, like our mothers, our sisters, and things like that, our colleagues. So I think that we're all going to play a role in that kind of thing. I guess it depends on how, right? I would never agree with the idea that it's a woman's responsibility to make like a man feel more loved if they don't love them or anything like that. But like, if there are roles that women can play to make men feel a little bit more open with sharing or discussing their feelings, which is absolutely going to result in better friendships and things like that, then yeah, women absolutely play a role.
Sure, and like they can play that role, but that this is ultimately men's problem, and this is something that men should sort out. Another thing is, there's a difference between like women changing themselves because of an act that men are doing upon them, and women deciding not to associate with men and them feeling something. So it's like a positive versus negative thing. So like women don't have any responsibility to do this. Just like unless men were doing something to women to hurt them, which they often do, they wouldn't have any responsibility to stop saying anything. Like if women feel bad because the vast majority of men think that women's body count being above one is like a really bad thing, like that's not something that necessarily women need to change in men, and like men need to cooperate with women there. That's something that is like a problem within you. If you're lonely because of that, that's a problem within you still.
I think people should be resilient towards like outside factors and people's opinion of you, but like I feel like this is a little bit too optimistic for how resilient people can be. I think that like the a world where in which people view let's just talk about men specifically, view women's body count as the example gave above one, you're like low value after that. I could say, yeah, it's like ultimately women's responsibility to be able to solve that, but obviously there's some truth to that because like they're feeling the feeling and you can like kind of rise up against that and like buck that. But I think for the most part, what I'd say is we all should be rowing in the same direction. There's clearly a problem. The problem is unjustified to cause such a issue inside of young women's lives. Men
Is this
bear
actually a
responsibility.
problem though? Like I do want to kind of drill into that because I've seen a lot of takes, maybe not necessarily for many of you, but there's been a lot of people who say this actually isn't a problem. This is just another symptom of male privilege. They're facing the same struggles everyone else is, and but they're deciding that suddenly it's some epidemic because suddenly they are facing a struggle that women and other demographics have felt faced throughout time. Right?
What,
So
loneliness is what
yeah.
we're referring to?
Hmm.
So to my
And
knowledge, okay, you can.
and does loneliness just is loneliness just a thing like romantically, or is it platonically as well? Do men have trouble, connecting with other men for some reason? Right. That's another question I'd like to address as well.
I'm pretty sure objectively they do. I'm pretty sure the stats are out there that most
So why?
people,
Why do you think that's the case?
uh, probably because of lowering social capabilities for men, lower desire for, like, I think in general, a lot of young people's social skills are going in the shitter because we're primarily stating on like social media and stuff like that. We're not talking and interacting with each other as much as we used to. I think that there's not very good outlets for men to be able to learn how to build social skills once they lose them. If you're like me and you play video games 16 hours a day, it's very hard to get caught up on your social skills when you're, in your later years. And a lot of men tend to live the neat lifestyle. So there's going to be a lot of men who are lonely.
I would go even a step further, actually. I would say that people don't actually know what they want. So when they're given opportunities to meet people or socialize, they don't even know how to continue that friendship or relationship because I'm not sure that they don't know what they're actually looking for, which is probably to be seen, to be understood, to be humanized. I can't tell you how many of my YouTube friends love you all, but we're chronically at home, at least I am. How many of them are like, I want friends, I don't have friends, and they don't respond to emails, they don't respond to tweets, they don't
Yes.
actually text. Like, I love them, they're great, everyone's great, I love you all. But like, you have to make the effort, and the effort is it's exhausting. And so I think when people say like I'm lonely, I think what they're often saying is like I don't feel seen. And then the question is, who do I go get that seen from? Is it my family, so platonic? Is it romantic, so sexual or romantic partners? Who do I actually need this from? And I think accepting, at least if you're in my category of person, like I know I'm not going to feel fully seen unless you're my romantic partner, because then you can see me in all facets, right? Like I can't do the same things with my mom that I can do with my husband, right? So for me, I would argue that we need to be accepting that we're not going to be fully seen by everybody, and we should be grateful for the parts of us that do and are seen, because it is so rare even in that.
I don't disagree with anything that was just said. Also, congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank
Brittany.
you. Thank you.
So you don't think that, like, let's say, if you want to build friendships, you have to be vulnerable, right? You have to put some, like you said, some effort into that. Maybe if you want some deeper friendships, like a closer, male friend, you kind of have to be open to deep conversations, things that are beyond just like the surface level, right? You don't think that it's like a fear of men showing their emotions to other men to be like, to risk being seen weak by other men?
Yeah,
Or
I
do you,
think, yeah, no, I agree. I think that is the case for a lot of people, even with women. I mean, even for myself, I do suffer from a little toxic masculinity, like to make a little joke out of it. But to be serious, I do put on a little bit of a front usually when I'm with people, because I'm not here to be vulnerable when I just meet you. I'm not here to play that game. But I think people don't know boundaries. They don't know how to socialize. They make mistakes and trauma dump. But also, men are told not to show their feelings. Men are told that it's a vulnerability nobody wants to deal with. And I think that that is something that culturally needs to shift, but the blame can't be on women, because we're already doing that. We already did it. So men need to catch up and decide, are you okay with being vulnerable even if you get hurt? Are you okay with having messy friend breakups? Are you okay with people maybe, I don't know what boys do, but do you guys like spread rumors about each other? Is that just girls?
Yeah,
there are
of course, yeah.
consequences, So yeah, so are you okay with taking the chance on people and saying like, I'm going to give you myself, I'm going to give you my vulnerabilities, please don't hurt me. And then they probably will. Like, you know what I mean? Dr. K says that you have to have a few messy relationships to figure out what you need and what you want. And sometimes it's the same in friendship.
so wouldn't it be like like a muscle, like working out in the gym, like just kind of build that resilience to, everything you described, correct me if I'm wrong, is basically rejection, right? Like rejection
Yes.
either, in the stages of like, a dating thing or a pre-relationship or somewhere even in the middle of a relationship when somebody decides like, hey, this friendship or this romantic relationship isn't working out. Isn't it kind of sifting through that? Isn't that like an internal process that men can improve upon? Or
I love rejection. I swear, if I ever read a book in my 40s, it's going to be on rejection. I think rejection is the key to consent. It's the key to introspection. It's the key to knowing the self. Be able to reject yourself, the bad parts of yourself. Be ready to reject the bad parts of other people you don't want to deal with. Be able to take rejection from people to validate their consent. They don't want to be friends with you. Cool. That's life, right? Like we have to understand that rejection is a tool that the
Let me know
universe
if
or
anybody's
people are
low.
giving us to better know ourselves and what we need. But you have to go out there and get rejected, which is annoyingly painful. It's very frustrating, putting in time, effort, having so many friendships. But long life friendships do exist. You just have to find the right people you were meant to know for that long, right? Look, I don't know
So
how long I'll know Ahrelevant, but I'm happy to know him now. But who knows if we'll know each other at 50?
Yeah, who knows?
the
We'll find out.
issue I'm having here, right? And this is an issue I have, and this isn't particular to this discussion. This is an issue whenever this gets discussed that I see that I personally have kind of a it's a pet peeve, and that's the solutions, right? Given the advocacy that we give is just get out there, meet more people, right? Exercise your muscle. Don't be scared of rejection. These are kind of very anodyne things, and I think men are actually doing these things. Like men didn't suddenly stop. I would disagree with Irrelevant that most men are living the neat lifestyle. I don't think
Oh,
most men are. I
that
think
would,
most men are out there. They're trying their best. They're putting themselves out there. But there has been something, right? And I can't really put my finger on what, but there has been a shift in the last 10, 20 years where more and more men are reporting, hey, I don't have any friends or romantic partners. And I think every time we talk about it, we 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 only talk about it through the pull yourself up by the bootstraps, just be a better person type deal. And I don't know if that's fair. I think that there are societal issues at play, and I want to kind of maybe focus on them a little bit if we can.
Yeah, can I be honest with you? I think the society's issues is that we are not promoting introspection. We are not telling people, why do you even want friends in the first place? Why do you want them? Are you feeding a need of loneliness like you are masturbating? Like, what are you feeding? What do you need? Why do you want a friendship? Because a lot of people are happy to settle into the friendships that they are forced into in their school grade. You know, you're placed next to somebody in class, bam, you're friends for life, right? Some of us didn't have that. I was homeschooled. I had to go out and find my friends. I had to have a lot of adult friends. I had to figure out, like, who are the people that I'm going to know for a long time? And then I had to make a decision about who to pick and choose. Who do I have energy for? How many of these amazing people am I actually going to make a priority in my life? At 2 a.m. when they call me, am I going to do it for everyone in my phone book? Girl, no. I have to pick and choose. Society as a whole is not telling people that they should figure out why they think they should have friends in the first place, or romantic partners, or anything. We're just assumed to have them because that's what TV shows. People have friends. But what does that mean?
Well, the other thing too is that are men's expectations too high of like both friendships and romantic relationships? That's the other thing too, just in general.
Well, can you elaborate on that? What do you mean? Are they too high?
Well, I mean, so if we're going back to romantic, like are men's standards of women too high, right? If we're going like to friendships, you know, are men's expectations of other men too high, right? Should we manage those expectations? How much should
Can
we
you give
manage?
us an example of what you would consider too high of an expectation, both romantically and platonically?
So, well, let's go just from the superficial, what we could see. You know, somebody's looks, like romantically, attractiveness.
Are you talking about like when men talk about the kinds of women that they want to date and they're like
Not even talking about just an internal process. Like, I want this type of woman. I want her to look this certain way. I want her to dress a certain way. Like how, you know, you can, you
Yeah,
know, go down the list.
yeah, I typically I typically don't fall in line with that idea because I think I see the red pill do a similar thing towards women. I think if you give somebody the opportunity to create a Build-A-Bear type of person, they're going to create like some weird person that sounds super specific and shit like that. Ass meets grass, somebody walks up to them, they're nice to them and shit like that, they're going to vibe and a relationship will almost certainly be on the horizon. I think for the most part, if you just talk to people, they're going to sound like the most vain, shallow pieces of shit in the world. But if you actually see them walk around and interact with people, that tends to go away pretty fast. I think men are no different.
Yeah, if I may, I just talked about this on my channel. I'm a big fan of Build-A-Bear relationships and life in general. Though my work is centered heavily on the individual. I mean, it literally is
You're
centered
winning
around it. So
in sub
my niche is particular. But like I
Of course.
am a 34-year-old woman who finally got married and found this person and was picky, and everyone told me that like, why are you doing this? Like you've had people propose to you, you've had interest, like people interested in you, and I'm like, nope, I'm looking for a very specific consciousness, like a very specific human on this planet that I'm gonna grow old with, because I'm like monogamous and I don't get divorced and unless abuse, and so like I'm very specific, right? I'm gonna tie myself to this human, and I finally found this human. Of course, through a Discord, because like we're all fucking nerds, we don't leave the house, and so like it makes sense. But I found this person, and I can't replace him. Like I think that's what's important here. I can't replace this consciousness. Like I can find people I'm also compatible with on the same level somewhere on the planet, but I can't replace this person that I've connected with now. And I think that yes, you can form a relationship easily with people. I've been in plenty of myself. Oh, we have this in common. We're connecting. The chemistry good, the sex good, everything good. But it's not enough to build a long life relationship where you don't then feel lonely in a 30-year marriage. Like, do we want it, depending on your goals, right? If you want a 30, 40-year-old marriage where loneliness isn't felt, then you need to see that consciousness for who they are. Do you want a marriage where you, like, people who are married feel lonely? So what are we really aiming for? And I think most people are aiming for feels good in the moment, good enough, I'll settle. Why am I lonely 20 years into my marriage? Because you never loved the consciousness. You loved the feeling you had when you first met.
Okay, well, so having, I think we all agree that having boundaries isn't the same thing as like unrealistic expectations from for a partner, right? Like
I don't know
everything that
what's an unrealistic I don't really know if I believe in them. Like, what does that mean? Do we mean in terms of values? Do we mean in terms of like I'm gonna have a billionaire? Like, be single. Nothing's wrong with being single. If you
Well,
want those,
yeah, yeah, it could be socioeconomic. I mean, we see the red pill videos about like women wanting somebody making 950K a year. I mean, that's an unrealistic expectation, right? It's the same thing if like men want like these supermodel virgin women who with like zero body count until they're 25 years old or whatever. Like these are unrealistic expectations. Of course, they're really obvious ones, but they're not the same thing as like let's say like a boundary,
I
which is
think though
everything that you set out.
I think you're allowed to say I want a guy who makes 900K a year, and then I think you're allowed to say I'm okay if I never get married. I think the issue is having the expectation and then being upset you're still single and alone versus I think the
Yeah.
right way to go about it is to say I want these things, and if I don't get them, that's also great. That's
So
where I want society to get to.
I just want to be
Sure.
clear, right? So what you're alluding to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that men have too high of expectations when it comes to romantic relationships. Is that your take, Tekma?
Yeah, I think a lot of men do.
Can you describe
fair.
where that like
Yeah.
where that
But
is?
I also
like,
think
what
that
is bringing you to
men
that
also
conclusion?
have unrealistic
Are allowed.
expectations of themselves in relationships as well, like how to conduct themselves in relationships.
And I also want to add that I don't think it's necessarily unrealistic expectations, but I think it's a lot of entitlement towards the things that you think you deserve.
Like,
It's not
what do you
just
mean by that? Can you
expectation.
elaborate on that? What do men think they deserve that they don't?
Well, like you yourself were talking about how everybody deserves to have somebody to love. I don't think
Yeah.
that's true. I don't. Why do you deserve that?
I
But if
think
you're
that
a
on a
really fucking shitty
baseline,
person, like
people deserve certain things, right? People deserve, right, to be healthy, happy, and have some level of social interaction. I think that's a deserving thing. I think that people should have that. I think that yes, you can act in certain ways which exclude you from it, and no one should be obligated to give you these things. But when we talk about deserve, yes, I do think people deserve to be happy in general, right? I
That's a
just don't.
different thing than feeling entitled to a relationship, though, right? Like
well,
that you're asking for somebody else
Yes,
to do
but I think
something for you.
yeah, but I don't think it's I don't think it's an out of pocket thing for anyone, a man or a woman, to say, "Hey, I want someone to love me."
But like you have to work on being somebody that's worth loving, right? That's another.
Well, so
You're not
then you're
entitled to love, unfortunately. I mean, like,
so yeah.
Ted Bundy isn't entitled to love, right?
Do we think the
Like,
average guy is Ted Bundy?
no, we don't.
Okay, so then I think
but
what
if what
Wick
the
is
average
getting
guy
at.
is not
Example,
something that
but-
women want. It's not women's responsibility to
Well, why is
compromise
the
themselves.
average guy not what women want?
Because men
think
don't
it's
want them. The average guys don't want the women. Men never liked that I worked and made more money than them. But I'm happy to date an average guy. If my guy does, I'm the breadwinner. My guy doesn't work. I didn't care. But he didn't care either.
Based.
So these average guys care that I make money. And
Sure.
that's the problem.
Do you think that the average guy is not getting in a romantic relationship because the women make more money than him? That
think
they
they
could be in a
have-
relationship with?
They have a preset idea of what a man is. And
Yep.
if they fall victim to that prescription, then any woman they meet in the modern world that is more educated, making more money, has a more stable job, doesn't need him for the same things, he's going to feel inadequate. But the dilemma is that like women want comfort. I want an introspective partner. I want someone I can talk to every day. I want somebody who's thoughtful and considerate. I don't need somebody who makes money. I make money. I need somebody who can do other things that I can't do. And so for a modern woman like myself, like I never cared that he had a Bugatti. I cared that he could, watch anime with me. We're on 250 episodes of One Piece right now, guys. We're killing it. That's what I'm looking for, right? So I think a
So-
modern woman. Go ahead.
So I personally agree, I guess, with half of this. I think everybody is perpetuating these things. I think everybody perpetuates shitty stereotypes about women. I think everybody perpetuates shitty stereotypes about men. All right, I've been shamed for how little money I've made by women. I literally had a conversation yesterday with a woman who said she would never date a bum nigga because he makes less money than her. It's just he's a loser. On
And
God,
that's her
just
construct, right?
Yeah,
Like
but
she's
what
been
I'm,
told like that's how I'm. Yeah,
absolutely
she's failing
right?
too. Yeah.
And so the idea in my mind isn't that like men have these things and they need to just fix it. It's that we all do. We all kind of have certain ideas, certain demons we need to battle with that tell us certain things. Maybe this guy is a loser because he works at McDonald's, maybe whatever. We got to fight that, right? And that's men and women. That's where I think the societal prescriptions come in. Hopefully things like media depictions and things like that of not showing that every single person who's a bus driver is a loser, and they're a respectable member of society, man or woman, right? This is where I'm getting the societal prescription because we're all part of the problem.
I agree. I agree. And if you have a more modern, like liberal Democrat, like very specific college educated relationships that some of my friends have, you would both be working, you would both be putting 50-50, you would both be doing something different while the man is still sort of being a gentleman, opening car doors, buying dinner. But it's more of like an illusion versus in my relationship, again, it's like, I don't care who pays the bills as long as we're a team aiming for a goal. In my brother's relationship, he's the breadwinner, she's the homemaker. Like every relationship is Build-A-Bear if you really know who you are and what you want, and then you can go for it. Because honestly, millions of people on this planet, one person is compatible. Where are they though? And are you going to meet them in this lifetime? Because this is a very different question.
So what you just said right there, millions of people, a whole bunch of people on the world, on the planet, and there's somebody compatible with you. I think that's what Wick was getting at when he's saying like everybody deserves love. For the most part, as long as you're not a Ted Bundy, right? For the most part, right?
We're not talking Hitler here.
Exactly.
We're talking the
average
man.
dude, right? You should be able to find somebody who likes you. It's the same with women. You should be able to find somebody who likes you. You can be quirky. You can be a little bit weird. You can be neurodivergent even with stuff like this. You should be able to find somebody that likes you for you. And the feeling of not being able to find that when, especially we can see other people so plainly, being able to do it so frequently, is even at like young ages.
Are they though? I would
Not-
argue they are ending up in divorce. They are not happy, and they
Yeah.
are not the people we should be emulating. Ending up in a relationship is not the goal.
I agree. I agree.
But hold on. How can we, I think this is part of the problem too. People aren't willing to take risks on something that might not work in the future because, well, we don't want a temporary situationship. We want a forevership, a forever relationship. So they don't take any chances that might, right, fail. And I think that this
We're
is
back to a
holding
fear of
men
rejection,
and
right?
women back, right? Men and women. Like this is kind of a non-gender thing. That neither one is willing to kind of take any sort of risk. And that is, I think, a large part of the problem here is men, since we're talking about men today, right? Men, well, is this really going to work long term? I shouldn't even approach this person. I've been rejected so many times in the past. I've been told left, right, and center by people that I don't have the right facial structure, or I'm not rich enough, I'm not good looking enough, I'm not wealthy enough, I don't have the status I need to get a job, a college education before I even attempt to get into a relationship. And so we put these artificial barriers in front of ourselves, and we think that, oh, I need to go through all these hoops before I even try anything. And I think that's a mistake.
I think you're self-rejecting. So in that sentence, you've given an example of a person, correct me if I'm wrong, who's already self-rejected themselves. Versus, and I would argue, this is not for everyone, obviously, but if you're thinking long-term cohabitation, I would actually argue, like, I did a courting version of dating. Like, I courted my partner. We went on 1 to 3 dates or dated 1 to 3 months, and then we either cut it off or continued it. And we ended up married because the goal was not to get to the second date when there was already a red flag in the first date, right? The idea is talking about values, not who's going to do the dishes. We'll figure that out. I want to know values. What's the expectation of this relationship? Why are we cohabitating? So I do think a lot of people in my sphere actually settle into relationships with. They do the opposite, where they're like, well, I can't say no. Nobody lets me, I should just go on this date. I should be lucky this guy even likes me. And then they end up in a 2 to 3 year relationship that goes nowhere, and the guy ends up not being the person, and she ends up not being the person. So I do think we're not going into relationships knowing why we want them in the first place. Why are we asking another human being with a whole life to integrate their life into mine? Why are we asking somebody to change their life for us? We should have a reason other than I'm lonely.
One of the things I might push back on what you said is like the whole values thing, right? And versus the small acts of service that you do to prove that those values are important to you. So if and overall the relationship, quite frankly. So if you have a partner that can't do the dishes, even though they need to do the dishes, like that's just a thing. Like your other partner's cooking, you do the dishes, right? You split it up 50-50 as much as you can. If you have a partner that's not pulling their weight with the small tasks, but they like proclaim they had all these values, right? They value the relationship. Are they just paying like lip service to you?
Yeah, I think this is like missing the whole point though. This is like people that are in relationships already. The problem is not that like, you might be slightly unhappy in a relationship and you're a little bit picky here. It's that you're not able to form meaningful relationships in the first place. And I think a lot of that is instead of searching for an actual person, you do what Brittany does, and you have this list of things that you think are the ideal person, basically objectifying the person that you're looking for, and making them somebody that is perfect for you instead of their own person.
Well, you don't eradicate their consciousness, right? You look for a consciousness that's similar to you and shares your values, right? So like my partner and I are very compatible. We're statistically like we're the same. We think the same. We dissect the same. When we watch YouTube videos or read Reddit stories, we're both coming to similar conclusions. That already is a green flag, right? Versus
I'm sorry. Finish up, but then I have a question. Finish up.
Versus other relationships, let's say you're dating someone and they're like, hey guys, like, let's say the problem is this happened in my community. Somebody was like, my partner keeps putting their outside shoes on their bed sheets. Like they'll walk outside and take their outside shoes and put them on bed sheets. And I'm like, dump him. Don't even question it. If he's not going to change, dump him. And the question is, why am I so harsh about it? Because his character, his sense of lifestyle, he's too grown. It's okay for him to do this. This isn't immoral, but it's not a match. You know what I'm saying?
But what you're doing is like preaching this philosophy of selfishness that is the problem in the first place, is that people are selfish and they think that they're entitled to these sort of things.
Everything is selfishness. If you're not selfish, you failed as a human. Selfishness can be good or bad, right? You want healthy or unhealthy. Being selfish means being self-focused. Knowing yourself and knowing what you want, and then being kind and joyful.
Okay, you don't have to do
happy.
the whole spiel. I get it. Sorry. I didn't pay the $250 for that.
Oh, okay, girly. Oh, man.
Yeah,
I don't know you, girl. I don't know you.
All right. But wait, I'm confused then, Boots, because if you're saying that like being selfish isn't right, how I feel like that directly is at odds with what you said previously about nobody deserves anything or any relationship. Nobody, you don't deserve this kind of.
What Boots actually said was no one's entitled to anything. No one's entitled to a relationship lasting just by virtue of it being, them.
Okay, that's
me.
Yeah, that's also
I think
that isn't really relevant to the. Okay, the reason why is because what Brittany was talking about was how people have certain criteria that they might refuse to budge on. If you don't meet that criteria, kick rocks. You aren't entitled to being in a relationship with me. Kick rocks.
Yeah, but there's a difference between having like a few minimum standards of like the way that you want to be treated and the way that you want to relate to somebody versus literally building your own perfect human and then hoping that.
I think when we're talking about a lifelong partner that you're going to be committed to and loyal to, and hope that they are committed and loyal to you for the rest of your life, possibly share property with, share literally legal documentation that says they are entitled to half of your money, I think we should probably be a little bit stringent with who we pick for that. Probably,
yeah,
no?
we are stringent, and that's why probably one of the big reasons why a lot of people are so lonely.
Well, they're lonely because they're having a disconnect between their joy and values, and then that selfish, I am entitled to this. A person who's not entitled is more than happy to be single.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think you cannot be entitled to a situation but still desire like social interaction with other individuals and not be able to find it. But
yes,
I think
would
for
they
the
be bitter? Would they be angry? Would they
Probably
be
not.
resentful?
No, probably not.
Right?
No.
Like that's what I'm looking for. Because like, look, plenty of people have to be single. I have brothers who are like nearing 40 and they're like, I haven't found her yet. Either she's going to be the perfect Catholic girl or it's not going to be a vibe, right? We're looking for the right lifestyle, the right values, morals, ethics. So we're not surprised 50 years into our marriage, like, oh my God, my husband's doing what on the internet? My wife's doing what on the internet? We want to know the person we're giving our body to, our financials to, our life, our kids to.
Okay, this
right?
is a whole jam. It's a whole other conversation. I have big thoughts on like you. I don't think you can ever really know someone 100%. You just can't. It's impossible. You're always going to get surprised. People are always going to change over time. If you are the same person you are today that you were 20 years ago, that's a problem. But it is also a conversation that misses the point of male loneliness, which I want to refocus in on, like, if we can, right? So the question becomes, why is it that women seem to be able to do this better than men? Like, the results we're seeing is women aren't having a problem with this at the same level that men are. And the question is why? Like, so even if you do think it's because, we're not centering our values, right? Or anything like that. Why is it that men just can't seem to do it and women can? What's the problem?
Well, first thing I want to say is I believe women's loneliness is also on the rise. It's just men's is a little bit farther ahead. So like both parties, our loneliness is increasing. So it's not like women have a fix all and like their loneliness is going down and men is going up. Seems like everybody's going up. Men is just going up a little bit faster. From my perspective, I think one of the main reasons why is because men are just not socialized in a way that to be able to effectively foster friendships. And in the current modern age, they're also not socialized in a way to foster relationships. We're very lost and misguided. We don't really know what to do. There's not really a good role model out here telling us, hey, this is what you do to be able to be comfortable in these modern relationships and to find somebody in modern relationships. You either got like Andrew Tate, or honestly, it feels like you got people on the left just saying fuck you, figure it out, men, right? There's not really somebody who's giving us good comprehensive advice. So there's that. And then for women, I think you do have a lot of shitty, like people tell you to do stupid shit like Andrew Tate and shit like that, right? And these red pill people. But also, like some mainstream media and stuff can also give a lot of women very confusing advice that doesn't really meet merit. But the socialization early on, I think women get a slight advantage for being able to foster friendships and garner shit like that than men. And I think that's resulting in the disparity.
Yeah, I would say that I think women generally, that statistic or that generalization about women, they like people and men like things. I think women are at an advantage because we like people, like psychology is women love people. So I think we have opportunities to be more introspective about ourselves, which lends to our singlehood not being like the end of the world to us. You know what I mean? We just have more time to form a relationship with ourselves. I do think men are neglected in this way, and I would encourage men to definitely take some time to get to know yourself.
Based.
I want to hear from the other side, though. I want to hear
what are some of the traits that women have, really, that men don't have in terms of building friendships, and why can't men just adopt those traits?
Because we're not socialized into it as effectively. Our parents don't teach us how to communicate and be diplomatic with it.
We can't change. We can't ever change.
That's not what I said. What you asked is what traits do women have that men don't? And I said the reason why women are going to have an easier time is because they're socialized into certain things that are more desirable for friendships at higher rates than men are. Not that we're incapable of achieving it. It's just that it's obviously going to be harder when you're taught to interact with other people in a way that is not conducive towards healthy relationships and friendships in comparison to somebody who is. You're obviously going to start with a lesser, like not as good of a head start, no?
But why are men more lonely now than they were before?
In platonic relationships or
Do you feel like men are more able or are less able now to form male friendships than they used to be?
Less able, yeah. I think right now is a very confusing, changing times for young men. I think that right now there's a lot of information that says either you're, like I was saying previously, you're a god for being born with a penis because Andrew Tate told me I was a god, or like I'm like a piece of shit because I was born with a penis because God forbid I'm a male. I think that there's very little in between that's like, hey, you know what? You're actually not like the king of the castle, but you're also not like a piece of shit peasant. And let me tell you how to live and navigate your life so that way you can have healthy relationships and friendships. Also, there's a really big issue with not having male role models in the household, right? I, for instance, didn't have a single, not one male in my life growing up. I had aunts, I had my mother, I had my grandmother. I had no man to look up to when I was growing up. And I know there's a lot of people, a lot of especially black individuals, who are struggling with the same thing. We have no person to look up to, no male to be like, okay, this is how I navigate the world as a man. We have to kind of figure that shit out.
I also think they have a lot of time on their hands versus before. I would argue that my ancestors most certainly didn't have time to think about, like, what do I like to do? Like, you know what I mean? So men are now given this opportunity, and I really encourage you to use this as a time to realize what your hobbies are. Who am I? What do I want to be? Who do I want to be? Because I do think men are now getting that same liberation that women had before, which is like, you get to choose, boys. And I think you should choose joy it makes sense to you as an individual, right? But I do think it is hard. I think you're in a transition. I think it's very difficult, and it will take a lot of support. And that support is where I think Ahrelevant's trying to make that point. Where do they get that support? I'm lucky. I have 8 brothers, so they have each other. They also have groups of
8?
friends. Yeah, I have 8 brothers and 1 sister. So, and I have like 80 first cousins. So we have an insane amount of support in we're Middle Eastern, right? We're immigrants. So like tons of family, right? So we're really privileged in that way. And I think when kids are only 1 or 2 and they have no siblings, they don't talk to their siblings, they don't have cousins, they don't have aunties or uncles, I think we're talking about something that is so much more complex than we want to give it credit for, right? But I know men can do it. I just know it's really difficult. And I know that part is the hard part, right?
What do you think, all of this, Boots?
I don't know. I feel like we're kind of like doing that thing that you said in the beginning, where we're like looking at the symptom and like trying to break it down and figure out little solutions for the symptom, when really that's not the big fucking issue.
What is
I feel
the
like
big
this is
issue
kind
to
of,
you? Let's get to the heart of it.
I mean, I think generally, as women have become more liberated and don't feel as beholden to men, men who have relied on that completion from women are not able to get that. And I think that's why like male friendships and that those have kind of declined, because in the past, fathers didn't have to teach their sons like how to treat other people necessarily, because if you did like the basics, if you got like if you got an okay job, then you could get a wife. Like this isn't it's not as it wasn't as complicated as it is
Well,
now.
those wives divorced those husbands, though. Are you talking about a whole generation of women that left their husbands once they got freedom? Like, which generation are you talking about?
Okay, but what we're doing is talking about why loneliness is increasing among men. So
Right.
even
You admit it's a shift in culture, but the culture you're referring to never existed for men to be like lonely. Women were lonely. Women were the men of that time, and now men are feeling the same loneliness women were feeling in those marriages. And now men are choosing to be single like they're volunteering to be single. In the same way, women, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just a switch in
I
demographics.
don't think that's true.
How are they
Why do
being?
what do you
Wait,
mean?
how are they being? Yeah. How are
So
they
I just read before I
voluntarily-
came on, I was reading the statistics of Pew Research, and it said that women are more single in their 50s, which reflect the boomer and like Gen X generation. But millennial women are doing fine, and older women are doing fine when their husbands die. Like women do fine, generally speaking. Men don't. But men haven't had the time to be lonely. They've been working. They've been working their asses off. Women have had time being housewives to figure out they're lonely. Now the women are working. Men are not going to college at the same rate. They are staying home, and now they have the time to figure out, I think I'm lonely.
So
Now they have to go through it.
Yeah, I don't think that. So the problem is not that men are choosing to be single, like, because if they were choosing this, if they were voluntarily like okay with this, it wouldn't be a problem. They'd be like, oh, that's a lifestyle choice. You're good. Have fun. Enjoy. Right. The problem is that they want to be in a relationship. They want to have friends. They want to not be lonely, and for whatever reason, they aren't. They can't bridge that gap, right? So I think that like to think that they're choosing this, I think that's just wrong. That's just
To be perfectly fair, I mean, I agree with the idea that they're probably not choosing it and stuff like that, but to be fair, those aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. For a long time, I decided to not be in a relationship, and the purpose and the reason why is because I just didn't really have time or any, like, there's no way I could reasonably be inside of a relationship given the kinds of responsibilities that I had, especially growing up. So there's people who might very much desire to be in a relationship, but there's certain burdens that are placed upon them that just kind of forbid that kind of activity or make it very difficult to be able to do. But in my opinion, when it comes to, I guess, the specific problem of loneliness and to bring it back to the changing culture and things like that, you're right. The women are getting liberated and their standards are changing. I'm not going to necessarily say increasing because we'd have to get into like whatever, but the women's standards are changing. It used to be, indeed, that you just have a job, and for the most part, because women couldn't work and stuff like that, you'd get a wife. But now that isn't the case. What do I provide, right? What do I do? This is where Andrew Tate comes in. This is where like the lift comes in. This is where all these people. What do I do? What is I as a man? What do I do? What do I bring to the table? I don't know. We don't know. I have no fucking clue what I'm supposed to bring to the table. Am I supposed to be macho? Am I supposed to make more money than my wife? Am I supposed to protect her physically? Am I supposed to present as this? I don't know. Andrew Tate says that's true. And he seems successful with women. He seems successful in life. I think he might be right. That's how I think a lot of young men are going about it.
Do you think people date like in categories, like in the like my brother is conservative and religious, so of course he'd have a stay-at-home wife, right? Bam, easy.
Sure.
That's like an easy no. That's he needs to be macho. That's like a really easy know what to do. But if you're a guy, like I have a lot of callers, I have a lot of interesting people in my life, I have a lot of viewers, and they'll be like really progressive in some ways, like pro sex work, pro furries, pro BDSM, pro this, and they'll be like, I want a stay-at-home wife who's traditional. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about how we can have these things, but that's a Build-A-Bear relationship.
Yeah.
That's a very specific relationship, right? And let's talk about why we think we need these things in the first place. And then I have a lot of guys who say they're going to go out of country to find these women. Like, I'm going to go to a different country to find a traditional woman. Again, what is this woman? And because like they're making 30, 40K. So like, what is this woman they think they're going to get, right?
Yeah.
In order for my brother to support 4 kids, he makes over 100,000 and up to 180K a year, working like 15 hours a day. Machining, I'm telling you guys, every man should consider it. It's a good industry and it's always here. So like it's one of those things, right? Like he works his ass off for that purpose of fulfilling that role, which is very easy to know. But when you don't know yourself and you don't know exactly what role you want to fulfill, it is more difficult. And it always comes down to knowing yourself. And society is a reflection of the self. That's what I believe, at least. Our collective
Wait,
self.
why does okay?
Do you
your
think
power
it was
lies on your
easier to
hand,
get
by the way.
a wife in a relationship like, you know, before 1968 or after 1968?
Hold on, my camera's gonna die right now. I need to switch out the battery. I'm so silly. I
Yeah,
forgot to put in my charger,
I'll
but
get
I'll come back. You guys talk.
Okay. I would probably say it would be easier to get into a relationship before 19. Well, I mean, if we're assuming we're foregoing the wars and shit, then yeah, before 1968.
Okay, why would that be?
Probably because of exactly what Brittany just said. I knew what my job was as a man. There's a woman. I need to provide for her. I know what my roles are. I know what A, B, C, and D I need to bring to the table to be able to satisfy her in a relationship.
You don't think it's just that men had to show up with a job and that was it?
Well, that was what I needed
Like-
to do. Yeah, that was a
And
part
that-
of it,
and
and
that
I
was
knew
it,
what I
right?
needed to
Okay.
do.
Okay.
What
So you
is
put
it? What
more
is
effort
okay?
in.
What does a man need to do right now?
Probably the number one thing is compromise in a relationship. And
So you think any man who compromises in a relationship is going to get a relationship as reliably as they would in 1968 if they had a job?
reliably?
Yes.
No, of course not. You just
Okay,
show up
so-
and you provide for a woman back
so-
then, and then now you have to actually work on yourself.
Yeah. So the
Right.
problem is we don't know what is like. We don't know exactly what we need to do. Just saying compromise. There's many people who would be willing to compromise with their partner who aren't in relationships.
Well,
Do you
I gave-
disagree
I
with
gave
that?
An example, like if your girlfriend is cooking, you're doing the dishes, right? That's an example of a compromise.
Well, that
There are a
assumes
lot
we
of
got into the
different ways.
relationship in the first place. A lot of these men who are lonely can't even get in a relationship, can't even get their foot in the door because of something that even you talked about, which is the fear of rejection. How is my desirability to compromise with an imaginary girlfriend that I'm unable to get because I'm so afraid of rejection? I never ask a girl out or become vulnerable or available to a woman. How does that help me? I can be the most compromising man on God's green. Doesn't matter.
But you can work on your fear of rejection, right?
Right.
You can actually
so
do that. You
so
can
now
put
we have.
yourself in situations that will work on that like a muscle, right?
Yep.
Like that's not something that women have to, deal with. That's something that you have to deal with. You
What,
have to deal
rejection?
with your own fear of rejection and your own fear of failure. Absolutely.
What
He
women
means, like,
have to
sort
deal
out
with
within
rejection.
yourself. He means like that you have to sort it out. Women don't sort it out for you. Of course,
Right.
like women
Oh,
do
okay.
have to.
Okay. Well, no, I actually I don't agree with that necessarily either. I think we can be kinder to people that we reject as well. I don't think that's necessarily a woman or man's responsibility. I think that's everybody's responsibility. When I reject a woman, like I should probably be sensitive to the idea that like I should, if like a woman walks up to me, is like, "Hey, you want to date?" and I'm like, "Ew, no." Like I probably shouldn't do that. I should probably be kind. I should probably be
Yeah.
like, okay, so you agree there
Right.
is some manner of responsibility that I have when rejecting somebody to look out for their feelings.
Yeah, but if somebody goes ew no, if you went ew no, that's your problem. That's not their problem. They shouldn't internalize that. You're just an asshole,
They
right?
shouldn't internalize that. That's a hard ass.
What? No way.
That's a hard ass.
Well, no, it's not.
And also, like people that are sensitive to rejection,
hard
you
ass-
can reject them in like a totally polite, friendly way, and they will take it as the worst possible rejection. So that's why this is like a subjective problem. This is something that you have to sort, because whether it's a harsh rejection or a friendly rejection, that doesn't matter. Like
Yeah, it
every
does.
person's going to take it totally differently.
No, wait,
It might not matter to
wait, that's ridiculous. Just because somebody can take my, oh, sorry, no, I actually have a girlfriend, as like a bombshell nuke to their self-esteem doesn't mean I should go, ew, gross, get away from me, whore. Like just
I didn't
because,
say that you should.
okay, so we can agree on the idea that we have some manner of responsibility to make it easier on people to be able to do the things that they should be doing, things like approaching people, talking with them, trying to foster friendships, relationships, and things like that. So we're not just like, so it does matter the way that we reject people because it affects how they proceed forward in their life. Because I promise you, there's a lot of the people that we're talking about, men and women, right? A lot of them will maybe put themselves out there once or twice or something, and they'll get like an ego-destroying moment or something like that, and then or hear about somebody who had an ego-destroying moment, and then they'll be petrified about the idea of going forward and doing it again. So, and in all of that, a lot of that can be staved off by just having a calm, reasonable, emotionally considerate response to somebody asking you out.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that's just a postponement of like your rejection sensitivity, because it's going to happen that somebody is not going to be super nice to you. You might get rejected nicely once and you're like, okay, cool, I'll just try the next one. And then you get rejected in a really mean way. So like, yes, we have that responsibility, but that's not solving the problem.
I never said it was solving the problem. What I'm saying is that you have a responsibility to do it so that way you can make so way other people can feel more comfortable doing what they should be doing in reality, which is talking to people, interacting with people, being polite and courteous is good because it enables other people to feel comfortable interacting with other people, being social. If we threw that by the wayside, so many people would be scared to even ask their teacher a question. Because it'd be like, you dumb fuck.
Hot take, but we have, right? You see, like I'm going to relate this to some other political issues that we've seen going on is people feel entirely okay with just being little shitters now. Their civility politics is dead in a lot of cases, right? They say, oh, this person was mean to me, or this person is an oppressor. They're a colonizer. I can treat them shitty. They've oppressed my people for years and years and years, right? So fuck them. And I think that we are seeing kind of like a mirror image of this play out when it comes to men and women. Men and women, both, again, both genders are at fault here, will think that, oh, this woman was mean to me sometimes, so it gives me pass to be just a shitter to all women and just go full misogynist. And women are like, well, men, oppress me and have been violent towards me and mean to me in the past, so I could just, I don't have to spare their feelings. Fuck them, right? It's their responsibility. And I think that is leading to the situation where we have now, where everyone's just feeling it's okay to be just a little shit to the other, thinking the other person deserves it. So.
Yeah, because
Which
like,
is a
how
great
dare
way-
you approach me?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it. That was all I wanted to say.
I was gonna say it's a great way to know who not to date, though.
That is
That's
true.
definitely not your person.
Kind of. Well,
It really
actually,
depends on what you're being shitty about, though, right?
Of course, yeah. I think if somebody walks up and is like, "Hey, what's up, sugar tits?" and then you're like, "Ew, fuck off, gross." Like, yeah, fuck that nigga. Yeah, fuck that guy. 100%.
Yeah, but this is the thing. That's not okay.
But yeah, but that's yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's not the average guy, of course.
It's not the average guy. Most men. Well, maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe because I'm a gentleman, a paragon of virtue, and so I only treat women with the utmost respect. But maybe I'm an outlier. So let's ask the women on the panel, Boots and Brittany here. When you have been approached by men, is it mostly respectful, mostly neutral, mostly horrific? What's your experience here? I'm just curious.
Boots, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's pretty neutral. Like it's not a horrific experiences. Obviously, like most women have had pretty awful experiences with men, me included. But it's not like I'm horrified if.
Well, no,
somebody
I'm asking if 100 men approach you, are most of them going to be horrific towards you? Is what I'm asking, right? Because I
Yeah,
recognize
no.
that everyone has had bad experiences. Right?
I also want
But I'm
to.
asking the experience. Is it usually bad, usually neutral, usually good?
Yeah, I'd say it's usually neutral.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say in my position, I do a lot of the approaching. I slid into the DMs with my husband. Like I'm definitely more of the approacher. So I'm gonna be real with you. When people do approach me, I will say I usually, not to be such a mom, but I'm usually like, so you did this wrong. This is what you should have done. Because like what they usually do is they'll take my no and they'll say, what do you mean no? And they'll follow me. I'm like, see how you're following me? This is giving me stalky vibes. And I know you're not a stalker. So like the problem is like I'm too dominant of a woman to just approach
Holy.
because I will lecture a boy. But you know what? I think those boys went off and dated a little bit better because I told them, I was like, you're handsome, you're nice, but this Riz thing you're doing isn't really like a vibe. It's like only a vibe in certain bubbles, right? So like when you're interacting with me, you're not going to get anywhere with me. Like it's not going to work on me, but I can see why you thought it might. And so we'll talk it through. But this is what I mean to say, like flirting, the art of flirting. Who are you flirting with? Who is the person? Is this a Pride and Prejudice situation? Is this a 304 situation? What situation are we in? Because these are different situations.
Oh my goodness, that's so based. So based.
Thank you.
So yeah, the only thing that I wanted to add is that I think when you're talking about men that approach women like casually, I think you're already selecting for a group of men that are going to be less considerate of women's like boundaries and things like that, because you're gonna have two main subsets, right? Either men who are like just like aren't very considerate, and men who really know what they're doing, are very confident and understand that. Obviously, I think we can all agree there's not a lot of men who really know what they're doing and who are very confident in their 20s. That's a pretty difficult thing to do. That's a reasonable skill. So there's not a lot of people. So in my opinion, the bulk of the people who are going to approach you are probably not going to be. They're just going to probably be drunk or something like that, and they're just going to like waltz their way through and do some stupid shit, some reckless shit, and maybe say some things that are pretty out of pocket. So I think using men that approach as a picture for all men is misguided.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. I'll say this one last thing. Is my partner would say that he is the kind of person that would have hoped that I would have approached him. Because, like, he doesn't want to be inconsiderate. He's a super considerate to a fault almost. Like, he literally is like, I just don't want to be rude. And I'm like, okay, I will be rude for you. I will send you DMs.
Have we demonized men approaching women too much?
Well, they do it badly.
This is the thing that I love you, Wick and Brittany. I love you both. Like this is the thing that I would say I fell prey to, and still kind of in the problem of. I grew up hearing consistent. You guys see that TikTok trend or whatever, where there's like women in the gym or whatever who are like taking a video of a guy who's like just like literally looking in their direction or whatever. I fell prey to essentially the prior version of that, which is a lot of women that I grew up with. I grew up surrounded by women saying how disgusting men are, talking to them in all environments, at work, in school, at the grocery store, and everything, to the point where I had paralysis to do any of that. I could not approach women in any circumstance at all because how dare I? Why? How? You're just out here shopping for groceries. You're out here, you're here to learn. You're here to work. How dare I, go through and impose myself onto you, just going about your business. So I think that there is an issue where, like I was talking about previously, there is a lot of men who are doing the approaching who are not great, at doing it, not great people. They're kind of, low-key harassing some of these women in many circumstances. And so women are like, yeah, men approaching me doesn't feel good because most of the men approaching them probably don't make them feel too good. And so they're just communicating that. And then there's other men who might be considerate or whatever, or just sitting back on the sidelines and are like, fuck, okay, I can't approach women anymore. I can't do it. So what do I do? If I can't approach them here, I can't approach them there, what do I do? I think a solution is to recognize that distinction. And if you are so scared to approach women in public because of you're afraid of how you come off, you are the exact type of person that should be approaching women in public, because you are so concerned with how you come off and the ways that they might be made uncomfortable, that I would think, in most scenarios, you're going to take caution and exercise caution when interacting with those, in comparison to the guys who just get drunk and do their thing.
Two things, because I want to hear everyone else's. I want to hear your opinion, Tegma, but I got to make my money. $5 from Testicle Johnson to ask, Wick, you once said that if women were less educated, men would be less lonely. Didn't say that, but thank you for the $5. $10 from Aaron M. Sound to say, pay Wick more moolah, great panel. Yes, you can, gang, if you like the content, super chat my way, throw me some subs on Twitch, throw me some bits on Twitch, and Kick as well. We're monetized there as well, so by all means. But yeah, Tegma, go ahead. What are your thoughts on this? On the have we demonized approaching women too much in public?
Well, one of the things I think that we should probably demonize a little bit more is men approaching women while they're drunk.
Wait,
Right.
while they're drunk or while they're
Great.
drinking?
Like while men are drunk or while women
men are
drunk?
drunk, not while women are drunk.
Okay.
Okay.
Men are,
Yeah.
like, because if you're so, like you've heard of liquid courage, right? Obviously, we're going to go and we're going to drink and we're going to approach that woman at the bar or something, right? There's nothing inherently wrong with drinking, like sharing a drink and a meal and having conversation, stuff like that. But if you're so reliant on alcohol to approach women, and I know guys who were like this, you're probably doing it wrong. You're probably killing your chances a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, it also sends a signal that you don't know. Again, if you need to get drunk to approach me, why are you approaching me? What is the vibe? What's the signal you're sending to me as the person? I'm assuming a hookup, right? Well, that's nothing to do with loneliness. So again, that has nothing to do with a relationship. That has nothing. I'm happy to. Don't get me wrong. I've been with a lot of people. Okay, I've been with enough people. I'm happy to sleep around casually. I'm happy to do no strings attached. What does that have to do with loneliness, right? So I think again, if the signal you're sending to a woman, if you need alcohol to sleep with her, is this isn't serious. It could turn into something serious, but
not even to sleep with her, just to approach her, right?
Yeah, but why are you approaching her?
Because you wanna tell her you're interested or something like that. You wanna pay for her bill. You wanna turn it into an impromptu date, right? But not everybody not every man that approaches a woman at a bar wants to just immediately have a one night stand.
But they want to eventually sleep with her, right?
Well, yeah, if
Probably.
they want to date.
Right.
To date her,
Which
yeah,
is
eventually.
fine, but again, the kind of women that date in religious bubbles don't go to bars, right? They shouldn't be, at least. If you're in a more serious religion, right? That wouldn't be where you're at. If you're a casual Christian, fine, whatever, have fun at the beer or whatever. But you know what I mean? What kind of, again, you're making a face. Do you know very religious people
I'm just
that
wondering
go to
what
bars?
religion has to do with my question. I mean, I
It's
kind of
about
understand that
dating
it's a sect, but
it's demographic dating. When you go to the bar, you're in
Yeah.
a different demographic.
Okay.
You're dating you're interacting with a different kind of person, right? I haven't gone to the bar since I was in my 20s. I don't go to bars. I don't go to bars unless I'm going for a cider with buddies, which is different. I'm not going to get approached. I'm not here to get approached. But if you're approaching a woman, then she knows, oh, he wants to sleep with me eventually. Maybe not the first date, maybe not the second, maybe not the third. So she's going to assess you in that moment right there.
Okay, so
And then-
how about, let's change the setting then from a bar to, we're talking about young men, right? 18 to 22. How about a college party?
Same thing. What are parties?
There are social gatherings.
What?
that
They're not
people-
libraries. They're
Okay,
not
I
political
gotta
events.
interrupt. I gotta interrupt. I'm getting triggered. Oh no, please. I'm sorry. This sounds like if I was 20 years younger, this would make me paralyzed. Like, oh no, I can't be drunk to go up. I can't even be drinking. Like, I can't go to parties because it might be wrong. I can't go and
No,
approach
you
women
can.
in bars because it might be wrong. Oh no, right? Like, to Ahrelevant's point earlier, this this and this is what I think one of the major problems is, and one of the things society has done is we have said if you're approaching women, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And how are men supposed to act? Because women and women still have this expectation of most women. Brittany, you are a outlier here, right? Most women, oh, I don't approach men. Men approach me. And so we have these two competing narratives going on. Women say, "Don't approach me," but I'm not going to approach you. So it it's like a paradox almost, and we're stuck here. What do you think, Boots, about approaching in general? Like, do you share Tegma's take here about men shouldn't approach when they're drunk or been drinking and things like that?
I don't know about that, but I think that, like, on the subject of male loneliness, if you're relying on approaching women or women approaching you or anything like that to fix your loneliness, then that's a problem. So I think that,
Can you elaborate on that, please?
yeah,
Like,
a lot of
if you're
people think that
relying
they're
on
lonely
approaching
because
women,
they.
right?
A lot of people think that they're lonely because they don't have enough, like, attention from women or something like that. But a lot of people who are lonely, they do have friends, they do have family, they have connections. They're just not able to use them to help their loneliness.
Yes, but if specifically they want a romantic
Yeah.
connection,
I thought
think
we were
that-
talking about
Yeah, you might
romantic
want a
loneliness.
romantic connection, but the romantic connection is not going to fix your loneliness.
Well, your loneliness for a romantic connection, I believe, is the prompt. Do you disagree that you can feel like a strong desire for an intimate partner, but not have it, and that could make you feel lonely?
Yeah, of course, it can make you feel lonely, but that doesn't mean that getting that is going to solve your problem.
Are you specifying the difference between being lonely and loneliness? Because I do think they're different.
How are they? I don't know how they're different.
Well, you can feel lonely and be like, oh man, I wish I had a partner I really connected with, but you know, whatever. Or you can be like, I am so lonely. I'm
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in my
not loneliness as the emotion, but like loneliness as the like existential concept of existing as a person who is lonely.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I just disagree with the take that romantic relationships can't help with loneliness
What?
in
Yeah.
any form. I think that obviously having someone who loves you can, not always, it won't always help, right? Like, but it can, and I think it does in many situations. Like, I remember being a young man and being single and being sad, and when I got a relationship, I was less sad. It was happier. I had
Yeah.
someone who cared about me. It was good. I don't I don't get it.
That's what I think.
You,
Yeah, I want to guess
Yeah, but
here
that's the emotion of loneliness, not like the condition of like being a
Right.
lonely person.
Boots,
think
There's
tell
a
me
lot
if
of people who are
the,
married who are still very lonely.
Right, I
Yeah,
think Boots,
I was
correct me
gonna
if I'm
ask
wrong, but this is a huge difference between men and women, right? Like women are fine being alone because we cannot feel loneliness. But men, you guys are saying your loneliness is connected to it. But like I'm wondering if this is the difference. Like I get what Boots is saying, like, yeah, I agree. Being
Wait,
with a partner is not conducive with your loneliness.
wait. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Like, there
hold
is social isolation and loneliness are two different things.
Okay,
Right.
hold on. So I think we got a couple of things going on. Do you agree with the idea? Did you say that women can't feel lonely?
No. But
Oh, okay.
again, there's the loneliness is like a philosophy. Like think about it, philosophy. Think about the consciousness and
Okay.
experiencing like loneliness, and then logically knowing like, yeah, I'm just single, I'm alone, I'm not connecting with people. These are two different sensations, and I feel like men are equating them as both the same, and women aren't. Like we are like fine being single because we'd rather be single and alone than lonely in a marriage.
Maybe the women on this panel, but I don't think this is a difference between men and women like broadly
Yeah, I
necessarily.
don't think it's a.
You don't think the studies are kind of reflecting that maybe that why women are doing better in terms of single, like when husbands die, don't women technically do better after their husband's death than men whose wives die?
I d- never seen what you're talking about. It could be
Oh,
100% possible. I haven't
Okay,
seen
okay.
what you're speaking on.
Okay.
In the event that that's true, I'd have to think about why, in my mind, and I have to see why they're trying to say that that might be the case. So yeah, I just generally wouldn't know. I do believe though women are better suited to be able to not have friends, to be able to build friends off of like starting at ground zero, and things like that. Like I said previously, I think women are more able to do that, so it's kind of a choice thing. Because I think one of the big differences between this is being single by choice and being single not by choice. These are massively different things. To be able for me to go, yeah, I just don't really want to date because I don't have time, versus I can't date because I can't find anybody who wants to be in a relationship with me. These are worlds apart when it comes to how you feel as a person being in that situation, because one is a choice and another one is like thrusted upon you, and you don't, it's a completely different feeling, right? I think for most people, to get back to at least what we were talking about previously with the male loneliness and how it manifests for like versus women in women's situation. I think it's actually extremely similar in some ways, because it's like, I think that women who I think there's many women who desire being inside of a relationship but have robust friendships. When they get in a relationship, they can become happier. I agree with Wick when I say I think that there is loneliness, like maybe I should change the word to a longing for a relationship that can be satiated by being in a relationship, that I tack on with loneliness, because it is a feeling of isolation, typically because we like
You
compare
feel
ourselves to other people.
unwanted.
Yeah.
Unwanted, undesired, unloved, and it makes you feel it causes you to feel lonely. So when you are loved, when you are wanted, when you are desired, then that feeling is mitigated. It's a simple concept. I've seen it play out in the real world. I don't understand why I'm getting pushback for it, but I don't know.
It's different. Have you ever been alone in like a crowd of people who say they like you, like as a YouTuber, like as a woman or as a man? Like you ever been adored by
Well, I've
people
never been
who,
a woman, so I can't
well,
speak
like
to that.
there's this reality where like lots of people say they love you, but until someone sees you, what's the validity of that love? If it's not even the way that you want to be loved, it's just for their own selfish desire of them saying they love you. It's very lonely. So there's no value in just being in a relationship. Now, Ahrelevant, you didn't mention the third option that I think, like, I just want to clarify is an option, right? You can be single and be like, I'm still waiting for that right person that I'm going to choose to be with. I'm not going to say yes to the first person who looks at me and goes, I love you. I love you too. It's like, no, like, I don't need the validation from the first person who says they love me. I want a real bond with a consciousness, right? Which means being single is just a state of being, much like meditation or anything else we're doing in life, right? Like, is this not an option? I don't hear it being named a lot.
No, yeah, it is absolutely is an option. The reason why I listed those two is because I wanted to divorce the idea of like being single by choice versus being single by like a result of you either just not having what it takes because you haven't maybe developed yourself enough as a person, you just like are an undesirable partner and friend, or like because you have some other kind of issue, you know, that prevents you from being able to. And I think that's a very isolating feeling, is that, and I just kind of wanted to draw the differences between those things. But I agree that third option 100% exists.
Okay. I do want to say back to the thing I was mentioning before. I can't remember where I read it, but it was saying that because women form great friendships, going back to what Ahrelevant said about men's loneliness, into their old age, when their husbands die, they still have a network of people to lean on, friends and family. While men, because they don't do that, tend to be more lonely in their older age. I'll send it to you guys when I find it. But that I think coincides with what you said earlier about men's friendships. Like men
Yep.
are neglected even into their elderly age, which I do think is a huge concern for men, right? And by the way, women problems of being loved and adored is because we also cook and clean. We're there for your kids. We tend to be everyone's therapist. We tend to do a lot of things that men aren't offering as a tool, which is fine. Like they weren't bred to do that. Like men aren't encouraged to be women's therapist or be their family's therapist. That's the women's job, right? That's aunties and grandmas and moms, right? Like I'm an older sister. I know what it's like to have everyone come to you at every hour of the day. Brittany, help me. Brittany, do this. Brittany, I don't know what I'm doing. I get it. Okay. Like I got it. So again, we have to remember like what is culture conditioning us to be like, and then what are we also sort of naturally good at in some ways, and then can we find a balance between those two things?
What do you think, Tegma?
Well, I just had the question of should women be expected to do all that, and can men pick up some of those responsibilities?
I think it's not gendered. I think the person who's best apt for it should do it. I think people who are naturally good at doing therapy, naturally good at being loving, naturally good at being the homemaker, like my partner's the homemaker. I'm the breadwinner. Like that's how we do it. Like that's just how the situation is best because the team needs to succeed. And that's the best way to do it, right? I love it. It's like a gift to have a balanced relationship. Same with families. We have 10 kids. Everyone has a chore. I did dishes because I was the best at dishes. But my brother did laundry. He was the best at laundry.
Even if I was the perfect right
Have you played the Lisa series? Shit's really
mix
wild.
or compromise or whatever was needed, a lot of men.
Lisa.
Again, I keep
don't know what
coming
that
back
is.
to this, but we aren't getting to the point where household chores are an issue, right?
Yeah.
We aren't getting to the point where the division of emotional labor is an issue. We can't get past hi. We can't get past hello. I wanted to talk a little bit about something Boots said earlier about how before men had a much easier time because women weren't in a workplace, and so men were only expected to kind of have a job and do the bare minimum, and women didn't really have another choice. So one of the things that we have seen and observed is that women are more liberated now. They are making more money than they ever have before. They are more educated than they ever have before. They have more options than they've ever had before. But when they look for a man, most of them want someone who makes as much as them or above, right? They still aren't like willing to take that my man has to have a job that pays at least as much as I make off the table. So men are still held to that expectation, but you know what I mean? Like, but they are they have to compete now with the woman themselves, and I think that also might be. Well, I'll ask. Do you think that's a problem, Boots?
So the way that you framed it is kind of weird because I don't
Please.
think that women have set the standards for what men need to be. I think that men have set the standards for what women need to be, and then men try to live up to the best version of what they think of as the best woman.
You don't think women set the
What?
standard for what they want in a mate?
No.
Really? Wait, so you're just
I
removing
think
all
they're
autonomy
starting
from
to
women in
now.
that situation?
No. Like kind of in this way. Like I think that the idea of autonomy is something it's thought of in like this really like liberal, like I'm my own person, I make my own choices sort of way. That's not true. I don't think that's true. I think that we all sort of fall into these ideologies and that we're kind of raised in, and we think that our choices are our choices, but they're very limited.
Yep.
I think that,
I
and
agree,
I think
sorry.
that women choosing this type of man is not a choice that they're freely making.
Okay, but then you would also agree that men choosing these things that make them less desirable isn't really a choice on their own either. Like that goes both ways to men and women. So when we're talking about men's decisions that make them less desirable inside of the place, it felt like you were very comfortable with saying an individualist approach rather than a societal approach. Why aren't you doing the same for women?
Right? How do you mean? Choices that make them less desirable.
Like not having good communication skills, maybe not a very robust emotional intelligence, things like that. Maybe unwilling to participate in what we would consider to be feminine activities, like nurturing or looking after our women counterparts or partners.
But those things were thought of as ideal. So if they're not thought of as ideal anymore, then the idea of masculinity needs to change.
I think the idea of masculinity does need to change. Does anybody here disagree with that? I also think the idea of femininity needs to change. Does anybody here disagree with that? So what's the issue? The problem is that it felt like when we talked about women, you were very like, okay, well, society gears them towards liking this kind of man, so like putting the responsibility on them. But when we were initiated here talking about loneliness in men, you were very comfortable saying, well, men got to do this, they got to fix that about themselves. I mean, it's an individual thing. That's on you. It's not women's responsibility to look after your loneliness. Why is it my responsibility to look after how a woman is raised to be
Because
able to
women's
like be whatever?
preferences are not hurting them.
That's
But
not
men's
wait.
choices,
You don't believe
men's
that, do you?
choices are to not do things that they think would like make them appealing to women are hurting them.
Wait, you don't actually believe that women's preferences aren't hurting them, do you?
I mean, like if you think of like the preference of liking somebody who's a really toxic
Yes.
man, then yes, that
Because of the
does.
patriarchy. Yeah, women are
But-
conditioned
but
to like those
the
kinds of men.
preferences that we were talking about there, like preferring a man that makes more money than you, I don't think that's hurting women.
Really?
is hurting
It
women.
is. It literally is. It's limiting
It
their
is.
dating pool artificially. Like Brittany, for a great example, would not have met her partner if that was the case, and that she's happily married to.
Okay, so she didn't have that as one of her preferences. So I don't understand the issue. If that's something that is actively hurting you, that is something that you need to change. Yeah.
Well, my point is, I think by and large, it is actively hurting to set up an arbitrary. Why should a man have to make equal to or more money than you just because he's a man? What we should do is we should go case by case. Hey, maybe I want a man who earns more money than me because I want to be a homemaker. I want to have children. I want to look after the children, things like that. Reasonable, fine. I don't think anybody here is going to disagree with that. If you want that, go for it, right? But like just the idea on its face that the man should earn more money than me, like the brother Wick was talking about in the prompt, like that's unreasonable, no? To just say like that. And I think that is a preference that is pushed on women. I agree with you. I don't think women just choose, oh yeah, you know what, fuck this shit. No, they're conditioned to think that is a that is a worthwhile man.
Yeah, it's an
that
artifact from back when
exactly.
men were the only ones able to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think Ahrelevant said it earlier. Like, and it's a human thing. We're talking about a huge shift in culture right now, and women are still confused about the
Yep.
script as much as men are. And I do want to encourage, and I encourage all my female friends, like, hey, if you're gonna date these straight dudes, because I date like in very like queer progressive circles, like if you're gonna date these straight dudes, you guys are gonna have to talk about the expectations of gender roles, no matter your political affiliation, because these are mostly liberal women. But they do expect them, like they do have this idea of dating like college graduates or people who make the same amount of money or above. They do have that same, which doesn't make sense to me, because I'm like, are we a team or are we a team, right? Like, why are we using an old script? So I would say that it is hurting people because I think they associate the old script with romanticism, and I think you
Yes.
can be romantic in the modern world.
Yeah.
Rabid Wombat.
Don't you? Oh, sorry.
Oh, just gonna make a little more money. Rabid Wombat donated to ask women, or say actually, women break up with men that cry in front of them. Men solve this by choosing not to cry. Sounds healthy, Boots.
No, I don't think that that's healthy at all. Like I think that there's a lot of toxic masculinity ingrained in women as well.
Well, so the whole point was that's supposed to be a preference that women have that hurt them as well as men. Having
Okay, if that is one that hurts them, that is something that if it actually hurts them, then they need to change. Yeah.
But they don't know it hurts them. Just like men are knowing they're hurting themselves. Like nobody
Yeah.
knows because they're not self-aware, because nobody's introspective, okay? You have to have a relationship with yourself. Why do we keep picking the same patterns? Why aren't we happy with the fact that we haven't found our perfect person? Have we even started to work on ourselves? Are we signaling the right things to our partners? Are we going to the right communities? I'm sick of like people selling me like, I want to find a partner, and they're going to like the worst possible places to find that partner because they're following some social script of like, I have to date this guy for status or this woman for status. If you want status, make a contract and have fun, kids. If you want a love marriage that's about consent and growing together and being a team, you're going to have to work a lot harder.
Question, right? If men, as a whole, as a group, woke up one day more emotionally vulnerable, they were more willing to do household chores, we were much better and more self-aware, much more introspective. Do we think that would actually fix the problem?
I think it would push us in a better direction, but
Sure.
I don't think it would fix the problem because, like I said previously, I think men and women pull the boat in a direction we don't want to be in, and we need to course correct. So we'd be like turning, right? We'd be turning the boat
So,
towards the right
in
direction,
your
but it wouldn't be.
opinion, what are women doing wrong? Wait, we've talked a lot about men and what they're doing wrong. Let's talk about what women are doing. And Irrelevant. I know that you have thoughts on this,
Ugh.
so I want to hear what you think that women, in general, are doing wrong and that they need to fix.
I think that I think it's actually very difficult because I have some experience with some pretty toxic women in my life, but they're doing it, I think, because of like very socialized reasons, and I think that's like very difficult to be able to deal with. So as an example, I had a previous partner who I was asking them like, hey, what do you want me to do sexually? Because I'm not just going to start fucking throwing you around in the bedroom and then just hope you like it. That's cringe to me. I'm not going to be that guy. And they explicitly told me they did not want to say it because it would ruin it. To communicate it would to ruin it. This is objectively a bad trait, right? I think we can all agree. That's not a good trait to have, right? So, but I can be sensitive to that idea because it's not like they chose to have that trait, right? It's not like they chose to find that hot or sexy and things like that. So there's going to be some things that we're going to need to look at that women reinforce in men that present as bad issues, right? Or bad problems. There's other scenarios as well, like just briefly, there was a man who told a story, I think it was Abba, from Abba and Preach, who told a story about how he was having sex with a woman, and he was like, hey, you want to do it? Or sorry, not having sex. He was like laying down with a woman in the bed, and he's like, hey, you want to do it? And she said no. And then later, after they woke up or whatever, because nothing happened, she said, I'm surprised, like, I wanted you to keep going. I don't know why you didn't do this. As like a young man, this could just, like, what is the lesson to learn here?
Such cases.
Yeah.
It's a
Many
Louis C.K.
such
joke,
cases.
too.
I think
It's a
almost
Louis
every
C.K.
man.
Oh, is it a Louis C.K. joke? My bad.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Well,
sure it's a Louis C.K. joke.
I've had experiences that weren't jokes, and also talked to many of my male friends that have had similar experiences where this were jokes. Like, I think I've told the story before, but it's brief, so I'll tell it again. I was making out with a girl, young Wick, okay, so 20-year-old Wick, okay, I'm making out with a girl. You know, I tried to get to second base, and she's like, "Oh, stop, I'm a good girl." Okay, and so I stopped, and we just continued making out. And then she kind of got cold. She stopped, and you know, she kind of started picking her stuff. I'm like, well, what's wrong? Well, good girls like bad boys. And then she just looked at me. And what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
What
Dump
am I
her.
supposed to
He's
do with that
useless.
information? But
Do
that
we-
isn't a unique experience.
No.
That isn't a one-off. That happens all the time.
It does.
We
It's
think
happened to
that's
me with girls. It's happened to me with girls. They've literally been like, I wanted you to force me. I was like, girl, I'm not going to play this game with you. I'm not
Is
going to
that
play
the
this
average?
game.
Is that like the average woman for
No,
real, though?
no. It's
No.
not, and I don't think anybody would claim that it's the
not
average.
average, but it happens enough where it's a problem.
It can, like, yeah, even
I
one or
think it
two.
is, like,
Go ahead.
it's not to that extreme, but I think that the average woman, yes, does like sort of fetishize her own like objectification in that way.
Sure, yeah, and I think that's a part of how women need to be a part of the solution, is because if you're a young man in that situation that I believe Abba talked about, that the Louis C.K. joke or Wick was going through, if you're a young man, you could just you could just grow to be like a sexual assaulter or a rapist off of that one interaction. Especially if that's like your first, you can just create a like really terrible person off of that one interaction, right? And so, you know, there has to be a process where you have to tell some people, hey, these things that you might desire, these situations that you're looking for, they actually are conducive to really unsafe situations, not only for yourself, but also like future women that this man might interact with. So yeah, I think that is kind of the role that women need to play. In that is recognizing some of their unhealthy habits
Go
they
ahead,
instill in men.
Segment's trying to get in here. I want to get
Do you
his take.
think that? Do you think it's more those types of situations, or also getting bad information from other men, like telling men what women want?
I think usually what happens is it starts with a situation where it's a little weird. It's not to these necessarily extremes. Maybe they are. They start with a situation like that. The guy gets really confused. What do you want from me? And then Andrew Tate says, "Well, you know what she wants from you. Hey, like, come on. Hey, look, come on. You know how it is, right?" And that's it, right? And then it starts to make sense. Oh shit. This is actually making sense. These people, they get women. They get it. They're telling me to do this shit. Yeah, that's valid. I know what I need to do now. And you're like, you feel armed with new information because the world is now making sense to you in a way that honestly it shouldn't.
And I also think. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, because it's...
No, please. You really should speak up. I've been talking a lot.
Okay, all right. I had another question about, like, going back to the, earnings thing and men needing to be, like, the primary breadwinner. Is it more women's expectation of men doing that and stepping up to the plate, or is it also a stigma of, passed down by men, like, hey, you're kind of a little bitch if you stay home and want to be the homemaker. You're lazy. You're good for nothing. You're a piece of shit. Like, you're a beta, stuff like that. Is it more that stigma from other men and looking bad and weak to other men, or is it women's expectations, or is it 50-50? What do you think?
I think that plays a part in it. Absolutely. I've had other men like judge my relationships if I wasn't making as much money as my partner. I've had men look at me less. That happens. But I don't think it's unique to men. I know a lot of women who've looked at me like that if I've been in a situation where I'm making much less and being supported by my significant other. I've been looked down on by other women too. So I mean, I think it's just a society just looks down on you as a man if you aren't the breadwinner.
This is why we need better cultural depictions, media depictions of men and women working low wage or moderate salary jobs and being seen as respectable pillars of their community like they are. We need more positive depictions of bus drivers and shit. Let's go.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Tradesmen, too.
And also, I think most people are like doing averagey things. We're all trying to just do our best and have our families and live our lives. And I will say, look, when my brothers interrogated my now husband, okay, that was a lot for him, but he handled it so well. And the first thing they went for is like, how much do you make? Do you make more than her? Like, what do you do? How do you feel about the fact that she's like on the internet? Like, they just went in on him. They're like, you're kind of like a little gamer boy, aren't you? You like play games? And I was like, okay, you all play games. Like, everybody chill. But like, they went in, and his confidence, his humor, his ability to be like, yep, like I know who I am and I'm into it. Like, his confidence made my brothers go, he's a good one. Like, you pick somebody who is confident and secure in himself, and that's all we've ever wanted for you. Because, like, to be honest, like, insecurity is in all of us, and I think you grow into that security, you grow into your confidence, you live and you learn through rejection, right? And I do think like that is what people are missing is like every opportunity is a moment to be a better, more secure version of yourself.
True.
But you have to have that relationship with yourself. But it's hard because it does feel rejection. It does feel like I'm never going to be loved. It feels like I'm worthless. But instead it's like, oh God, I want to change the mindset. I want to have a different perspective on it because I think there's a real perspective to be had here.
Do we so this is maybe a little bit of a vibe change here. But I am curious because, again, one of the reasons I put this panel together is because of this vibe. It triggered me. Every time I see people talk about men's issues, right, or try to bring up men's issues, I think that a lot of the response, especially from the left, is, why are you even talking about this? Why are you even discussing this? We have so many other issues going on. The questions I have for you is, why do you think that is? Is it healthy? And if we want to change it, and we might not, what do we do to change that? And I know, Boots, specifically, you had an issue you said that you wanted to bring up with me about how I usually handle these things, right? At the beginning of the things, you said you had a problem with how I talk about
Oh no, I think we kind of talked about that, like just the
Oh.
whole relying on women to like a relationship would totally fix this person. Like yes, this person has a right to this, but no,
Oh,
yeah,
it was
it's not like a big
specifically
thing.
just me using the word deserve. Okay, fair enough. But my other questions remains, and I'm curious.
Yeah, I think that leftists these days who are really just like liberals have this like super strong focus on identity, and if something bad is happening, it's because of some part of your oppressed status, unless somebody else is more oppressed as something bad is happening too. So it's really hard for people to talk about men's issues because men are the oppressors. The oppressors. Sorry, I don't want to imply that I think that. I think this kind of thing happens like in a lot of different ways. I don't want to get into it, but like you can see this happening when women speak up about trans stuff. They get shut down even though women are marginalized. Like this is like women are people that we have to pay attention to because they're not heard as much unless somebody who is less heard is speaking up at the time. And I think that that's kind of happening with men. Like even in the men's conversation, they're like, Black men are definitely much lonelier than white men. Absolutely. Because they lack the familial connections. They lack the strong bonds that white men do. I looked it up earlier, really, in case you were doing that. And it's hard for us to focus on that. Hard for them to focus on that because there's nobody that can be sort of put down.
What do you think, Tegma? Because you've had some problems with this. I've seen you tweet about it.
Yeah,
You're
I
invited.
think somebody's marginalized status probably it doesn't probably, it definitely has an impact on, you know, the level of loneliness you're going to feel, because the idea of that is that you're literally left behind by society, right? So, you know, in addition to all of the other complicated things that we just talked about, you're, you know, devalued and pushed aside by society. So there's that, and then you have systems working against you. There's that idea as well. So, can you repeat the question, Wick, a little bit?
Sure. Well,
for a
I'll just
second?
be direct here. Well, first of all,
Yeah.
$5 from Bass FSC to say you should have had me on the panel. I would have gone ham on this one. My question is, why does this topic always avoid how much men love women? Well, we'll get to that. But so Tegma,
Okay.
you've tweeted out, and the reason again I reached out to you was due to one of these tweets. Things like men should just be better, and men aren't lonely; they just want someone to fuck. I'm paraphrasing,
Yeah,
right? But
sometimes men do put that out there where I'm feeling lonely and I just want to fuck. Yeah, absolutely. It's
But I
a
guess-
manipulative thing that men do sometimes. Absolutely. Just like there are manipulative things that women do, for sure.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen the tweet, but if the statement was just like men, or put as plainly, or in the paraphrasing as that, yeah, I would like to see it because I feel like that's a very broad statement to just put out there.
So one of the tweets 19 hours ago: have lonely men tried being better people? That's it. Then we got I quote tweeted you here. When men say they are lonely, it means women won't go out on dates and have sex with me.
Bruh, what? That you? For real?
That's Tekla. So again, why do we? Yeah,
Well, yeah,
why is this response when people are like, when men are saying, "Hey, I'm lonely and I'm having an issue," why is this okay to respond to them like this?
I didn't respond to anybody with that tweet. I just put that out there. First of all, I wasn't retweeting anybody. You know, it was in regard to the male loneliness thing, in regards to like Andrew Tate and all these different, you know, different variables. Yeah.
I mean, you're making a general
we did
statement
talk-
about men, though.
Yeah.
And do you think that like male loneliness, like when a man says he's lonely, it really just means he's horny?
Well, we had a whole panel on just like how men are lonely because they can't get dates, right? That was part of what I said as well.
Well, that wasn't in the tweet, no?
That goes beyond.
Yeah, it was men can't. Okay, I'll bring up the tweet.
Yeah.
The thing that I said was, it wasn't just men can't get laid. It was
No, I'll read it again. I have it up.
when men say they are
say-
lonely,
this
it
is
means
word for
women
word.
won't go out on dates and have sex with me. That's two things. That's not just one thing.
You said and
Yeah.
have sex with me, but sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Do
Part
you
of it
do
is,
really
yeah.
do you believe that to be true? You don't think there's men who are lonely because they can't find friendships? Isn't there like 1 in 5 men who have no close friends? You don't think any man who says he's lonely is saying?
Of course, I think that.
Okay, so then, when you say men who say they're lonely, what they really mean is they can't get dates and have sex with women. Like, if you were like some men or something like that, you just said men.
Okay.
If I said women just want to look for men who make more money than them because they're gold diggers, what would you say? That's cringe.
And I'm pretty
like,
sure
hey,
you
should
said
be...
something very similar to that in a conversation that I've had with you previously.
Like, people make
you do make
sweeping
broad
comments.
sweeping statements about women.
Yeah.
Okay, you can pull it up. I did not.
Examples,
Like, I just
real quick.
want, I
wanna
want
hear-
everybody who hasn't
Please.
made like a broad sweeping generalization at one point on Twitter, just, raise your hand.
Yeah, but I do it for money, and I let people know I do it, and I'm not.
Okay, I'll let
put up
people
that
know I
off.
do it. Like, okay, I just put it out
Fair
there,
enough.
man. That's
But
it.
I'm
Like, who
curious.
cares? Like, I'm having a conversation now. Like,
Sure.
now people know what my actual
But I'm
views
asking.
are.
I'm asking you. Do you not think that even just putting stuff like that into the ether, I think that you are indicative. It's not just a you thing, Tegman. I'm singling you out because you're the only one here,
Sure.
right? But there are a vast number of individuals who have made tweets worse than that, just responding to problems with male loneliness of just fuck them, basically. Like, that's how it felt, right? It's
I think
absolutely how it
people
felt.
don't care about other people's problems when they feel like the people that have made their problems harder are complaining. Men
depends-
have made
yeah.
Sure.
people's problems harder, so when they complain, it's hard to give a fuck.
I mean, I think people generally don't care about other people's problems in the first place.
Unless it
it's,
usually
like,
relates
politically
to them, right?
advantageous for you
Right.
to care. Yeah.
Right, because people are like we can't care for everybody. There's 8 billion people. It's too many.
Yeah, and the idea is why should we elevate men's problems over like all of the other groups of people we have that also have issues? That's another part of people's frustrations. If I could steel man them, I guess.
Please go ahead.
Like,
man.
well, I just did. That's, like we have problems in other marginalized communities. We have problems with women, Roe v. Wade being one of them, or, seeing a rollback in, women's reproductive rights. We're seeing a rollback in, trans healthcare as well. Why should we prioritize men over other groups, right?
Because
To be
I think
honest,
That's
Yeah.
to
not
be
what
honest,
I
if we
believe.
did,
Like, I
those
think
things would go
everybody-
away.
yes, thank you,
if
Brittany.
we helped
Yes.
men become emotionally mature and be introspective and give them space to grow, I hate to say it, if we actually did, then they would understand why reproductive rights are important and why queer people aren't their enemy and why they need to take a chill pill.
Okay, I agree with that, but are you a coach or something? Like do you work with people?
Yeah, I work
in
with
like
people.
self-improvement and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So probably you would agree that when you're working with somebody, I'm a personal trainer too, by the way.
Oh,
So
dope.
one of the things that you would agree, if someone wants to achieve their goals or improve themselves or improve something that they otherwise weren't aware of or wouldn't admit to, right? The first thing is that individual in front of you has to take accountability for their goals and what they want to do. So if you're telling men like, okay, we need to be more emotionally like mature so that we understand other people that are different from us, blah blah blah, right? That only gets you so far if men don't take accountability, or individual men, or however you want to phrase it, don't take that accountability, don't take that first step to improve, whatever it is they need to improve, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the problem is like I would like more men to be like Ahrelevant. How do I make that happen, right? The thing is Ahrelevant was raised around women, and he was also given opportunities that maybe shifted his narrative, or he was given a given cards that pushed him into a pocket of the world, or I can't make everyone irrelevant, so I have to meet people where they're at. So meeting people where they're at is sometimes they're not ready to admit it. Like I have a few callers that I love them, like they're great, but like they are male callers, and they will be like, I'm gonna complain about women and why I'm single, but I do not want to hear it from you. I'm like, go ahead. And they'll complain, and I'll look at them and like, I know what you're thinking, and I'm like, but like, do you see how we're still at the same problem we were at? People aren't ready just because we need them to be. Society isn't ready. It's not where we need it to be. So we have to work on the individuals that are ready to do it. And I think as a whole, men aren't ready yet, but they're slowly working on it.
I want to ask the rest of the panel if they think that more men should be like irrelevant. Tegma, do you think more men should be like that?
Shit.
I
Oh,
don't know much about Ahrelevant to make that
God.
judgment. I think,
Boots.
I think he's okay. I mean, he
I'm
seems
okay.
pretty
I'll settle
intelligent.
for okay. I'll settle for okay.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a solid C. It's passing. So
Yep.
we'll go with it. Um,
The women in my chat love Irrelevant. I just want to say that right now. We're loving him.
Hey.
Boots, do you think
Uh,
more men should be like Irrelevant? Why or why not? You mentioned earlier that he made broad, generalized statements that you took issue with. You want to elaborate?
Yeah, we had a convo at like the start of the incel arc. And it was I don't know, like maybe he's changed since then. I don't think that more men should be like Irrelevant. I think that even Irrelevant thinks that he shouldn't be like Irrelevant. I think that he's constantly
We're
trying
gonna
to
ask
improve
him next.
himself and
Yeah.
become like the man that he should be. I don't think I don't think that more men should be like him.
Well, open and considerate and thoughtful and self-improving. Those ways, I mean.
I have
Well,
I have a
$2 from
question.
Adarius. $2 from Adarius to say women be less capable. So true, King. But yeah, what about Boots? What about Irrelevant? Do you think is lacking?
Are you just trying to start conflict?
Yeah,
Is that what you're doing?
absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying
I
to do.
think that Irrelevant thinks of relationships in a really transactional way. He thinks of women and other people in general as things to complete him and help him in his journey rather than as their own individual people. Maybe that's changing. I think that kind of changes as you learn to have relationships. So that's good. I hope that is, because that was really frustrating. I think that he's using his own self-improvement as a way to ignore his depression and attempt to treat it in a way that is like not admitting that the sadness is something that's permeating your life and the inadequacy is something that is manifesting in a very misogynistic, toxic way.
Jesus, you're my therapist at this point. Holy fuck.
Irrelevant.
God damn, you know more about me
Sorry.
than I do. Holy shit.
Do you think?
I've talked to you
more men
once.
should be like you?
Jesus Christ, I talked to you once. Sheesh. Okay. Damn. All right. Okay. So, one, I'm very confident I'm not depressed. I actually think I'm one of the most happy people on planet Earth.
I remember you saying that.
Yes, and I think that's pretty. I think that's pretty true because I feel great joy for the things that I have. I'm proud to say I haven't been lonely in 11 years, which is incredibly nice as not only like given the context as a man, but also like as a person. That's very rare. And the reason why is because I've spent very deliberate time building robust friendships with people around me, as well as my identical twin brother. Shout out to that guy, my best friend ever. Right? That's been really resilient over the years. And so there's that for the depression. The other points, I mean, I guess I would just need to know exactly where you're drawing the line and stuff like that. But yeah, I think in general, everything that I've said has been pretty consistent. I think that I've shared these opinions for a while. You were talking about like my changes that I've made has been. I didn't really understand. Maybe you were getting at the idea of like coping with sadness or depression or something. The changes that I made were because I recognized that there was a problem where my social skills are lacking, and that resulted in an inability to get inside of relationships because I straight up, I'm not very funny or charismatic when it comes to interacting with women I don't know. So it was very difficult to be able to do it. I thought I would do it on stream. I thought I'd be able to go through several pieces of self-improvement, including working out and building those social skills. So if other people have that problem, they can go through it with me. That's how I would view it, I guess. If you have that perspective of me, it's fine.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, we are kind of wrapping up on the closed portion of this, but I've been getting like 20 DMs about people railing to get in here. So if you guys want to stay for a little bit out in the open, that would be appreciated. A lot of people have a lot of big feels about
I
how
will be right back.
no one on this panel knows what they're talking about. Direct quote from one of the people who wants in, but we'll see how that goes. But I wanted to give each of you a chance to have closing statements on this and tell people where they can find you, because I want to give you that that ability. And we're going to start in the, I guess, reverse order I started since Segma isn't here. And we'll start with Irrelevant. Closing thoughts, where can people find you?
All right. So closing thought. I think that we're all in this together. I don't think male loneliness is a man's only problem. I don't think women's loneliness is a woman's only problem. Don't forget, we're all getting lonelier. It's not just men. Everybody's getting lonelier as time goes on. It's tragic. So I think it's everybody's problem. We need to figure out ways that we can more effectively have women fit a broader, strata with what they want to do. Be able to self-actualize. Same with men. We want to make them feel comfortable doing whatever the fuck they want to do, of course, within the bounds of not only what is legal, but what is moral. And also you can find me at twitch.tv/Ahrelevant and kick.com/Ahrelevant.
Go check him out, gang. Ahrelevant is a great guy. And everyone should be like Ahrelevant, in my opinion, at least when it comes to his good qualities. And you should avoid his bad qualities. And that's my hot take. I know.
It's literally
Crazy. I know. Crazy. Brittany Simon.
Okay. I agree with Ahrelevant, basically. Like, this is a human problem. Like, humans are the reason the world is the way it is. Like, as a societal, if we look at society, like, we're made up of people, gender aside. And I also am, like, queer and want to, like, think about the nuances of gender in that conversation, right? Like, all of us are having different relationships with our bodies and our images and what we feel obligated to do. So consult yourself, consult society, and come back to yourself and really talk to yourself about what will make me happy. What is my joy? And usually you'll find that loneliness is related to joy. And the more joy you have, the loneliness becomes a relationship that is actually not the end of the world, right? It's just a part of the human condition. So good luck out there, but I know you can do it.
You can do it, gang. And gang, where can people find you?
Oh, just Brittany Simon on YouTube or Twitter or anything else.
Go check her out, gang. She's great. Wish her a happy future marriage. She just got
Thank
married
you.
recently, and
Thank you.
once again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Next up, please.
I find it really annoying that conversations about male loneliness or male problems in general just turn into how to get them to have a relationship with women. I don't think that that solves the issue. I think that it's much more deep-rooted. And I think that some of the negative aspects of male loneliness need to be discussed more, like how it's weaponized to basically like reinforce their own misogyny. And yeah, I think that this was a pretty fruitless conversation, but it was fun to be here. Thanks, Wick.
Fruitless conversation. Well, you know what? I appreciate you being here anyway, fruit or not. Where can people find you?
Oh, nowhere.
Nowhere.
I'm just a shit poster, yeah.
Got you. Just a shit poster. Oh, we love you anyway. Thank you for showing up. Tagma.
All right, so I'm also kind of with Boots on this one a little bit. I wouldn't say it's an entirely fruitless conversation. I think we, kind of touched topically on some of the stuff that I wanted to. I would have liked to have gone more into, some of the behavior and thinking patterns that men fall into that kind of lead themselves into isolation, because what is loneliness but just like isolation sometimes of your own creating. So that would have been, kind of more interesting maybe another time. But I largely think that, if men want, like, better fathers that are more present in their lives, to be better husbands and better friends, role models, etc., they have to step up and be the change they want to see, and they have to divorce themselves from outcomes more. You have to do things because they're good things to do, and they're behaviors that you want to infuse with your personality. And also just try not to impose myths on other men, such as, repressing the emotions and needing to make the most amount of money and needing to be the strongest person at the gym and most aggressive and, things like that. So you can find me at Tegma TV everywhere.
Tegma TV everywhere. Check them out, gang. Thanks again for coming, gang. If you've liked this content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on Kick or Twitch, hit that follow button if you haven't already. Consider subbing to the channel. It really helped me out, throwing bits, donations, all that. Gang, we're going to end the closed portion, so if you need to go, I understand. But if you'd like to stay, I'm looking at the backstage, and we got a line. So if you have an hour to kill, please stick around. We'll try to get to as many people as possible. Let's bring in 2 at a time, I think. This probably be the best way to do this. And, yeah, we'll cycle through. Sound good, gang?
Sure.
Cool. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Hello, you're live.
Hi.
Hey, what do you got? What do you got for us? What do you got for the panel? What do you think is how do you think it went? What do you got thought wise? It's your time to shine, gang. We're gonna cycle through 2 at a time, and then we'll address your issues, and we'll get more people on. So,
Say speaks. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure, by all means. I like the panel overall. I don't think it was half as bad as some people have seemed to have made it out to be. It was, more fun than half the shit you can find on this website. I have a few questions for you, Brittany, if you don't mind.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, so fuck, I had a love and hate relationship with you throughout like the entire thing. Like I found myself at one point saying that like, yeah, based, and I absolutely agree with everything you're saying, and then the next second I wanted to fucking Roblox myself. And it's like a lot of what you said isn't wrong, but it felt useless specifically when it comes to lonely men. So like you described your dating process, for example, which seems incredibly intriguing, don't get me wrong, but like you sound like a fucking Terminator with a checklist of rules to see if the guy would be compatible for like co-hosting your Mind Flayer tadpole. And I'm just sat here thinking like, what the fuck am I hearing? And so like, for example, you said that if a guy doesn't meet the X criteria, you dump them. And like, I'm not here to hate on that. If anything, I understand that. But at the same time, I don't know how that applies to anyone other than like whatever portion of population already has incredibly extensive dating experience, which I would assume most of these lonely folks do not.
I'm making the assumption that if a majority of people are lonely and they're dating, they're on like Tinder and they're on dating apps, they are getting dating experience and they're still feeling lonely. So I'm assuming these people are getting plenty of dating experience and not feeling seen. Right? And then I date for cohabitation and long-term marriage, like 58, 60 years. Like I'm looking for no divorce except out of abuse. And so like I'm looking for somebody who's going to do life with me. So we're talking about values. Like Not So Erudite and I did a faux date about this. And we lasted 5 minutes because the moment I asked her about God, that's it. You're out. I'm in my 30s. I'm an atheist. I'm not interested in the religious or spiritual people who like want to believe in a God, right? Great reason to dump someone on their first date. But what I'm hearing from people is like, no, give them a chance. Maybe they'll be less of a weird God-like person. Maybe they'll be less anti-gay, right? So it's easy to end a first date on values when you know your values, right? Ask them what would they do if they have trans kids. That's my favorite first date question. What do you do if you have a trans kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But their answer will tell me if they've thought about it, because I've thought about it a lot, and what they're going to do about it. And I need someone right now as the person they are to be compatible with me so we can grow together. Not someone who I'm living for their potential, which was a mistake, and I think a mistake a lot of people make in their dating.
All right, yeah, I can understand what you're saying. It seems like I've approached the question like very much differently. I have like some level of background in Red Pill and incel spaces specifically, so like I've kind of assumed that we're predominantly talking about people who are like they do not have these kinds of experiences, which is what made me think, because you've mentioned earlier something to do with chores, I think it was, that like you sort of like the person who will end up doing it is the person who feels like more naturally inclined to do it in a way. And I just feel like, especially in my age group, I want to say, most of the like, and it seems to be an issue just broadly, that like you will have relationships where nowadays, and this kind of kicks into the question about categories and dating that you've asked. It seems to me that, like, for instance, if you want a tradcon life, you have that desire for that. Like, I respect that. But at the same time, like 80% of men out there easily, you can fucking forget it. You don't make the money needed to sustain that kind of life. And at the same time, it seems also to be the case that you will have your partner who works a 9 to 5 and you work a 9 to 5. And whilst you're both working 9 to 5s, your partner still does the vast majority of the chores at home. That seems to be anecdotally what happens quite a lot. And like in this regard specifically, I don't disagree with Tegma at all, in the sense that like this is a moment for you to improve yourself rather than to like try and do what the red pillars do, which is like find a pincushion of like women or Jews, or ideally Jewish women if possible.
Okay. AOP Productions, what you got for us?
Hello, everybody. It was a very, very interesting talk, but I think the biggest problem that I noticed a lot was that there was never really a proper, not even a proper, but just like an explanation of how do people get out of loneliness, even if it's platonic or non-platonic, whether it's men with other men, women with other women, but just the idea in general that, you know, there's not a solution to get out of loneliness except for introspection, get out of your bubble. But, you know, I think that for a lot of people, they just don't happen to be environments where they interact with a lot of people, right? Like I know people who are very comfortable talking online, they'll get on panels, they'll do Discord. When it comes to IRL, they freeze up. So if anybody here on the panel does have a solution in the sense of like, how can you get somebody to get better at talking to people IRL face to face, regardless if they're looking for relationships or not?
Can I want to hear the incentive to that? I'm sorry, because I always say this, like, I'm an online person. My person is an online person. Why would we meet in real life?
Well, as an
Hey, but a lot
example,
of
how would
people
you meet
get
your husband,
radicalized
right?
by like literally only interacting in online spaces, and
For
then they
sure.
like totally lose the ability to communicate in real life.
All right, so I personally, exactly what you're describing, not so much on the loneliness thing because I haven't been lonely, is what I've been going through over the last year to some pretty effective results, which I was just trying to build my social skills and my ability to interact with people so that way I can foster friendships and possibly relationships more effectively. And the way that I did it is kind of a forehead moment. I literally just went out and talked to people, made a lot of mistakes, a lot of dumb mistakes, and stuff like that. And I learned from those situations. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever done. I was in the gym 6 days a week, and I've done it for the last year. That was way easier than doing this shit, okay? That is way easier than going through and making these mistakes and talking to people and like making yourself vulnerable to interacting with these things. Because playing catch up when you're talking about interacting with people socially is very difficult, but it only gets harder the older you get. Okay, because a guy who like is kind of stumbling his way through conversations, it's like okay when you're like 16, 17 and shit like that, but when you're 26, shit ain't cute anymore. You're like, you need to kind of know how to conduct yourself in an environment. So like knowing, like getting out there, talking to people, like feeling more comfortable doing it, which is only can really be done by doing it, it's very difficult to do, and I have a lot of sympathy for any person that is kind of left behind socially.
If I can just jump in on that, because my lived experience, for what it's worth, is exactly aligned with what. Yeah, sure. So like what I've gone through is like almost identical to what Relly's talking about, and what I think is important as well to build up on is the fact that at least in my anecdotal experience, most of the time, like a lot of us will get caught up in like this idea that like you will say the wrong thing, you will stutter at the wrong moment, and like you will be accused of sexual assault and you'll end up in jail for 25 years. Like that just doesn't really happen. Like in vast majority of the situations, you will make a fucking idiot out of yourself, but you'll be okay to like move on with your life. And before I jump off, because I don't want to hog any more airtime, because I understand it's, not my panel, not my show. Relly, you talk about like incel adjacent stuff, and you spoke about ED a while ago on Twitter. Are these like the kinds of things that you talk about a fair amount, or things that you struggle with yourself?
ED is. I haven't talked about it that much on stream. I only talk about it every once in a while. But it's definitely something I've struggled with, especially like fucking recently. Oh my god, it's a whole fucking thing.
Would you be open? Because we've exchanged a few words on Twitter before, but I think that like
DM me.
Okay, yeah. Because that's what I was going to say. If you'd be willing to talk about it,
I just have one last
super
thing,
similar
real quick.
experiences.
One last question. So, do you think that for loneliness, do you think it would be good for people to get retail jobs or stuff where there's a lot of interaction with other people, like it has to?
So a big thing for me. So actually, the gym unironically helped a lot. So the way that it worked is I went to the gym with like 5 different people. So easy to be able to help build a natural like social interaction with these people. I got a couple of friends to do it. Not everyone's going to be able to do that. Like 5 people inside of the gym. That's crazy, right? But it allows you to more naturally do that. Maybe you can rub shoulders with some of the people that you might be friends with in there. Here's a little trick. All right, a lot of people don't think that people in the gym like talking. People in the gym love talking, especially if you walk up to somebody like, "Hey, can you help me with this?" They love it. They fucking love it. People love this shit, and that gives you that kind of natural interaction between people and stuff like that.
Especially with the staff. Especially the staff. They 100%. Love it when you come and ask them questions and chat them up and stuff like that. The staff, trainers, coaches, front desk, everybody.
So more people go to the gym is the solution.
No, sorry. No, sorry. But like, I think the big thing is if you have some people that that go out and are active, go out with them, because you can rely on them to talk to them, and they will probably have other people that they're going to talk to when they're doing those activities and things like that, and then you can naturally expand your social circle, and then maybe start making some mistakes and learning some lessons and things like that. That's how I did it, is go out with my friends.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
I do have 3 things that, to that last guy's question. So we probably need like infrastructure where we can meet each other more easily.
Yep.
If you're building social skills, they're built by repetition, so keep doing that, and then get a sales job. Those are awesome.
Okay. Sick and Sulfur. Which one of y'all want to go first?
Let me
let
change
Stick
my
go.
volume. Sulfur can go first.
Hey,
Oh,
Sulfur.
okay. I just thought it was really weird, this entire panel about men's loneliness. There's a lot of dating advice really being thrown around, like what to do when you get this amazing Tinder experience of dating. I just want to know what the actual prescriptions are for the societal issue of men's loneliness, and why did we spend the whole panel talking about women and other shit?
Okay, so what are the societal
Not
prescription?
me, sorry, I just want to let me like caveat. Boots did great, but yeah, I want to know
Okay.
what the societal prescription is.
I think we need better
Men's
media.
loneliness.
Yeah, I think we need better media depictions of men being vulnerable with other men, so that way we can normalize it. I think one of the fastest ways to normalize any kind of behavior inside of society is to show, unfortunately, like really attractive, really charismatic people doing it, like and shit like that, and the people will just fall in line. It will become a goddamn TikTok trend overnight, right? That's the way to do it. So like showing men being vulnerable with each other, being friends with each other and stuff like that, sharing very intimate details about their lives with each other inside of very popular media depictions, and trying to spread that around and normalize it is probably going to be one of the most effective ways to get that societal change.
I love that. I think it's an amazing idea. Hey, Tagma, what are your societal? I can't talk. What are your societal prescriptions for how we fix men's loneliness?
Societally, like I said earlier, probably building more infrastructure where we could like meet each other. That's not just bars and restaurants. I think that would be cool, like nightlife,
Okay.
more like day life. And I'm more of like the individual mindset, because we don't have a lot of like control over society, or at least it's very daunting to us as individuals to think that way, especially if you're a lonely man, right, or a lonely woman. So coming together probably with like people who have like-minded, like the same mindset and stuff, being able to do that. Individually, I think, friendships are, something that I really wanted to talk about more, like how can men build more friendships? Because I think the power of friendship goes completely like, by the wayside in these kinds of conversations about men's loneliness. Like friends can absolutely help you through these things, like even if it's through networking. And as far as like building social skills go, like you have to just keep doing it. It's repetition. You just get better at it. You got to be willing to suck at something before you can get good at it, right? Every gamer knows this. Every streamer knows this. Every person at the gym knows
I don't know what
this.
you're talking about. I never
Right?
sucked. I just came in, wicking out from the get, like from my first
True.
ever stream.
I mean, that's sort of the
Sure, you
problem,
came
right?
out
That's what
perfect.
we profess to people, is to up their game before they've even started.
True.
Right. Letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. Like I can't go out and make friends until I have this job or this, that, and the third, right? Or same thing with like dating. I can't go out until I'm making that 100K plus fucking job or some shit like that, right? So achieving some phantom status. So,
So my only question back to you then, Tagma, because I think these are great answers. But why is your tweet history so toxic then? When you have these great ideas, why aren't you like out there championing some of these great ideas? Because everyone seems to really want to push back that it's like, all women have to fix this one issue, or all men have to fix this one issue. But it just seems like the discourse is so toxic. Why feed into it?
why feed into, well,
Why are you a shit poster, Tegma?
why am I a shit poster? Well, you have to get attention first to get influence, right? So there are points in what I said that I stand by. I do think that a lot of men, especially young men, kind of use the loneliness thing as like a manipulative tactic. That was the point of that tweet, right? It's not just shitting on men. I'm not gonna, I think there were 3 full-time fathers, husbands, and like workhorses that responded to that, rightfully so. And I saw something really, really cool in that. They all came together to talk about their situation, and talk to each other and connect to each other, and I think that's really great. I learned something because I'm a childless single, dude. So I learned something about, like, here's some husbands that are dealing with loneliness. They can't go and develop friendships, the friendships that they want to develop because they're fucking always working and they're doing, they're grinding and they're doing the thing, right? They're present for their wives, they're present for their kids, and I feel for those guys. But in like, the feel good shit doesn't like sell on Twitter either,
Well,
So like I'll lead with the most inflammatory, and then we'll find some nuggets and truth there.
that's fair. That's fair.
I will yield
Let's
my
go-
time to sit.
Yeah, let's go to Sick, the incel
Yeah, I was-
support group. What you got?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, first of all, vulnerable men is never gonna be a TikTok trend. Okay, it's just not gonna happen unless it's the Facebook moms of TikTok. All right. Second of
What are
all,
you talking about? You boys are a
Incorrect.
thing.
You're wrong.
Huh?
You're just wrong. Have you ever heard of Ted Lasso?
yes, I've heard of Ted Lasso.
Yeah. Okay. So you know what the Diamond Dogs are, right? It's men coming together, being friends.
I said
talking
I've
about
heard
each
of
other,
Ted
right?
Lasso.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
that's the extent of it.
Yeah. Okay. So there's this really cool thing. Go watch the show where you're talking about media depictions, really, right? This
Yep.
is an example of a really popular show where men were getting together and befriending each other, and sharing each other's vulnerabilities, right?
Yeah,
That's
and
exactly
I would
what,
imagine in the TV show, it is also juxtaposed by a pretty masculine guy who's very commanding and is able to organize a team and
You
has
couldn't
all
be
these
more
qualities. Okay.
No,
All right.
they organize a
Well, I
team
mean-
not through being domineering, but through being a listener and a team player himself. He's the coach.
I would
He's-
love to watch the
it-
show to know
you-
because we
you-
might have
you
a
should-
different perspective on that.
I
But,
recommend it.
yeah, my problem actually, in a big way, with what's going on here is, first of all, men just need to lower their standards. I don't know how many times I've been in a Discord server where somebody posts a picture of a girl that they're talking to from Tinder, and then everybody's like, "Oh, that's a 5." No, I'm sorry. If that girl was in your DMs, you'd be fucking her right now or begging to. Okay, she's probably an 8. Lower your standards a little bit. All right. Second of all, media is the problem. What we're doing here is we're teaching men to like perfect their game before they ever get involved in dating and learning how to be super respectful. I'm sorry, people learn through experience. You're not going to get it right the first time. Go ahead and just get in a relationship with a girl and be really messy about it. I'm not saying don't disrespect her. But I am saying, like, it's okay to sit there and neg her about the fact that she's into astrology, but also read the shit she sends you, okay? I think the problem is media. We have this idealized like Disney relationship, and in this panel, it seems like we're trying to construct that for men to be the ultimate respectful person, and they don't even know how to get their foot in the door. Just message a fucking girl. That's how you do it. And you're going to be really shitty at it the first like 20 fucking times. Figure out how to flirt. I can't tell you how to do it because your flirting is going to be different than mine. But if you're not messaging women, there's a reason you're lonely, and it's because you're not putting yourself out there.
I wanna hear Brittany's response to this. I'm really curious. It feels like a call out to Brittany right now. So I'm curious what you would say.
Yeah, I would say, everyone comes from a different cultural background, so everyone has a different toolkit for dating and success and what that looks like, right? And so my concern is that we're generalizing something that I think is much more niche. I think all of us are dating very different people, and then we're all just here in the same panel, and I doubt any of us would end up with people that are similar. And so coming from my background, like my siblings are all very different. We all date different kinds of people. None of us date similar people, and we all were raised by the same family. So it's kind of one of those things where I really encourage the individual dating experience, and I don't need to be negged, or I don't like that game. It's a fine game.
She's
People
lying
play
to you,
it.
for the record. Chat, she's lying.
And that's one of the things, right? Like, look, I appreciate what you do. You probably do a lot for men, but like, you're not the person I married, and the women like me won't marry you.
That's fine. I disagree with you.
And that's
but
the point,
fine.
right? We shouldn't be marrying each other. We should be finding partners that are actually going to bring us joy, right?
I've heard so many women say they just want a nice, respectful man, and they do. But they also like the push and pull of a relationship.
Some women do.
Somebody who's a no, most
Who are playing
women
games. No. You say most. You know 8 billion people? You know half of that population? Or do you know
No, they need
100
to.
or 1,000?
Wait,
No,
wait,
you
wait,
do.
wait. When we
you do
when
need
we
to.
look at studies, do we sample 8 billion people?
But
or do
those
we take-
studies-
or do we take a sample set and then make extrapolations based on the results of that study? I
For
don't need
sure.
to
The
know
study
8
you're
billion
referring to,
people.
or are you making it up?
No.
I think the
I'm saying
studies are fine when you generalize the populace, but when you get down to the nitty gritty of an individual, I am a woman, and what you're describing is not related to me or my audience's chat right now, or the women I help, or the women I talk to, or the women like my mother or my grandma or my aunties. None of them apply. None of these rules would work with them. My father would not like your advice. My father would not like your advice. But that's the problem. They're real men and real women, and so you are talking to a certain demographic, and that's fine, but you're not speaking for all people.
Yes, that's the point, though. Okay, so this panel is about lonely men. Okay, these are men who are not even getting their foot in the door. Okay, and when
I'm
women
not aware
like
of
you,
that, right?
Women,
Like maybe I'm confused. When I was asked to come on this panel,
what panel did you show up on?
male loneliness does not mean only men who never get anyone. Lots of people feel lonely. And the statistics we're looking at are not men who have never had an opportunity to date. They're lonely people. So that's a very big demographic.
Okay, when studies gauge for loneliness, they're doing it in relation to romantic relationships.
Yes, I am aware. But you are saying men who never get a date? Because I don't think that's the demographic we're talking about, is it? Men who never get a date?
Somebody who's lonely could be a guy who was like successful in dating until he was 20, and then he got into his 20s and got thrown into a different environment, and that's an environment he doesn't know how to vibe with. So yes, they might have some past experience. What I'm saying though is you guys are setting up an unrealistic expectation of what women want and act like it's not going to be like the rigors of getting to the dating phase is not going to be as confrontational as it actually is. There is a lot of push and pull. There is communication, but there's also just like trying to understand each other's bounds, and that's going to come with a lot of poking and prodding. And it's not all going to be nice. It's not all going to be pretty.
Yeah, I think
feel like you guys are setting up men to fail.
When I think about healthy relationships, I'm thinking about kind, compassionate, and I'm thinking about not tricking people, not playing games, and being honest. And like, I'm just concerned. Are you trying to get men in long-term relationships or just on a first date?
I don't know that men could handle long-term relationships until they get the first date. If that means they have a couple of relationships that are 2 months long, that's fine. But what I care about when we're talking about solving loneliness is the long-term relationship. Yes. I'm talking about how to get men to that point because it seems like everybody's talking about what a long-term relationship looks like, but not how you get there.
Yeah, I think I'm confused, right? Because most people have like their first girlfriends and boyfriends in high school, have some sort of holding hands. I was homeschooled and I had a boyfriend and a girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was, you know what I mean? Like most people have something. So I don't know, again, are you talking about most people who have some sort of first date at one point in their life? Are you talking about people, because like then they, like I'm confused. Aren't you talking about a very select group of people? Like I feel like you're talking for such a niche group of people.
If we're talking about lonely men, whether or not they have a dating past, that's not a niche group of people.
Okay, then the loneliness has nothing to do with getting dates. It has to do with their relationship with their consciousness and the joy they're experiencing with just being alive.
I understand. I understand all the psychologically related stuff. I get it. You're really about that. But
okay.
I'm sorry.
Are we good?
I just have a problem with it. Personally, I think men are lonely because they do just want their dick in a vagina. And if that's the case, that's fine. But until they go through a couple of relationships and realize their own self-worth, when women aren't around, how worthless they are in the context of your own self-worth, I mean, I don't know what to do about that. I'm sorry. I feel like...
Can I respond to that? Do you so just to hammer it out? Do you actually believe most men are lonely because they can't get their dick in a vagina?
No, I think they want their dick in a vagina, and the fact that they can't makes them feel lonely. I don't think getting their dick. Hold on. I don't think getting their dick in a vagina is going to be the solution.
Okay.
I think that's going to be the experience that allows them to contextualize that that's not why they're lonely, but it is a remedy in the sense that it's going to allow them to gauge where that loneliness comes from, because they're going to stick their penis inside of a vagina and they're still going to feel lonely afterwards.
Okay, so then wouldn't the argument just be that men are lonely and they are misguided in what the solution to that loneliness is? I feel like that's a more appropriate way of because what you just said was rather inflammatory. It made it sound like what you were trying to say is that all men want to do is stick their dick in a vagina and then that's why they're lonely. But I feel like what we just got to was a completely separate idea.
It'd be the inverse of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think maybe people on this panel would disagree with that, but I think there's a lot of men who are absolutely raised in a specific way to think that, like, yeah, when you get your dick in a vagina, I mean, the whole game changes. You're like born again, bro. Like that's the height, that's the peak, that's the apex.
I'll step in here. Just real quick, I'll step in here. Well, I think it does help in certain cases, right? Not all cases, not every time, not all the time, but there's some people who, yeah, they just need someone who is a sexual and romantic partner. That's what they need.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I guess my big problem is, like, there's this phrase that parents used to tell, which is "do as I say, not as I do," because the parents have learned from experience and they're passing on lessons to you, and you're just supposed to understand what they're saying and take it in deeply. And so there's probably a lot of parents who are telling their children when they get into healthy relationships, like, this is how I found self-worth, this is how you gauge it in yourself, and this is what's going to make you happy, is being in this type of optimal relationship. But the problem is I don't think people themselves internally have a proper gauge for that unless they go through the rigors of relationships themselves. Like, they're not just going to get into the first relationship and understand these things. It's the difference between hearing and it's the difference. I don't know how to
Between listening and understanding, I think,
Yes.
or hearing and understanding, whatever. Yeah, I know what you're on about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Respond to that, but then we gotta cycle, unfortunately.
I would say
I'll just listen from stream. If I don't need to respond to anything, I'll just dip.
Wick, I wanted to say I kind of I agree with what you're talking about, that it can help, right? People can feel again, the idea that nobody in the world wants you can be very isolating and things like that. So when you can even just find one person who would be willing to share that kind of a moment with you, that'd be another thing. But I also don't necessarily like the phrasing that it's just like a dick and a vagina. I feel like for a lot of people...
I agree. I agree.
Yes,
so
sorry,
I want to be more clear. Like, I say that because that's what he was saying.
Yes.
But I think that, like, an intimate relationship is intimate more than just a physical sense.
Yes.
It's an intimate sharing of emotions, of a life, of a...
Yeah.
Someone wants to be around you, and yes, sex is a part of that. The physical intimacy is a part of that, but it's not the part.
Yeah,
right?
sex is very vulnerable, and the idea that somebody would be that vulnerable with you, it feels very reassuring and comforting that somebody trusts you that much to do that with you.
Yeah, so can I cut in? Maybe I was in the backstage chatting with some of the guys, and I think that's an actually excellent point. So why do we pretend that young men don't want that aspect and that avenue with women, and that isn't going to be helpful to them in not feeling lonely? Is that what the current conversation is about?
What do you mean?
Wait, why would that be helpful?
Having
in their loneliness?
having a open emotional relationship with a woman, being able to have sex and express your sexual desire for her, how would that not help them with their loneliness?
Okay, but that's
How would
two
that
different
not be able
things.
to
Like
express
that-
their love and affection for a woman?
So,
Wait, I have
people
a
were talking about the
question.
sex before, and how
I have a-
that would help the loneliness.
What I'm
So,
what
are
I'm
you
saying
talking
is,
about the sex or a relationship?
I'm talking about both. I'm talking about that. I think one thing that I find interesting is we separate sex and relationships when really one defines the other. Actually, having sex defines a sexual relationship with a woman in its nature. That's just kind of point of fact number one.
I
But
have
number
a quick
two,
question for you, actually. Do
well,
you think that sex
go
is the
ahead.
only way that you can express intimacy and love for a man?
Absolutely
Like from
not.
a man?
No.
Okay.
No, but
I'm
the
just-
reason
I'm
why I
just
think
curious.
it's important to bring this up is because we treat men's desire for sex as something that is just purely carnal, but it isn't. Men love women, men want to be with women, men want to protect women, and men want to pleasure women. So to me, I find it really interesting, even in a little bit in the earlier conversations we're looking at, we don't ever stop to ever just talk about how much men really do want to love women. My question is,
Right.
why is that?
Well, I don't think there's well, I hope there's no debate as to the idea that men want to, or they love women, or they want to be with women. It's how they express that. The desire, like, I can say that I love a woman, and the way that I express that love can be very toxic and very, like, overbearing, controlling, or it can be very beautiful, very
would
nice, and
fundamentally
mutually.
disagree. I don't think that
Really?
would be the case at all. If you say that it is toxic and overbearing, then it isn't loving someone. If love is a
Well-
reflection of one's selflessness towards this other person, if love is me trying to protect and help this person, How am I being? Where's the toxicity coming
What
from?
I'm
Where's the
stating,
control coming
when I'm
from?
talking about like a man loving a woman, is that I'm talking about them. That's where their emotions are coming from. That's where they believe that they're doing. They believe that they're loving a woman by say, being concerned for what she's wearing when she goes out, by doing this, by
Oh no, I'd
maybe
have to
being a little bit.
disagree I'd have to disagree with those
Well,
men myself.
well, yeah, we
I'm.
can we can disagree with those men, but we can't disagree with the idea that that's how the way that these men in their minds express love, right?
I would still have to disagree.
Okay,
I
maybe
think
we
we
can
would.
disagree.
I think once we peel back the layers, we find that it's actually about their own selfishness, and they want to maintain, as you say, control over the woman. But if
Sure,
you want to
I
protect the
don't
woman
disagree.
and take care of her, you're not going to be too concerned. Oh wait, her butt's hanging out. That bothers me. That's your insecurity. If you're saying you don't want to display this because I want some form of intimacy and some speciality to this relationship, the motivation changes though. And if that's
Yeah.
what you're saying, then
So
maybe perhaps, but then a conversation between the two people need to be had.
we're just defining love differently in this context. I think that men and women can love other people and they can express that love in a very toxic, immature way. I think that can
Okay.
happen, and it
So
doesn't
for
seem
sake of,
it doesn't seem like you can. And if I bridge that gap, let's say I agree with you. I mean, everything you say, then, well, not I guess everything, because then you would have to agree that there's a fair amount of men who don't love women. So your statement earlier
sure. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. My problem is this, right? When we talk about these conversations with male loneliness, a lot of the times we ask the question, well, why aren't men doing like enough for women to like get their attention?
Sure.
Why aren't men becoming better for women? Which is kind of silly to me because that is the life path of very many men. This is the motivation of very many men. If you sit down and you talk to many of your male friends, what do they want? They want at some point to have a family. Now, of course, this isn't all, because some dudes want to be Casanova, but I think we overwhelmingly overestimate the amount of men who want to be the fuckboy player instead of the average dude who's just a mechanic who just wants to come home to someone that cares about him. To me, it's just really interesting to me. Like, even just throughout the conversation we had today, we didn't stop to discuss how men want to be able to just relax with the woman, to just come home and hug the woman, to just talk to the woman, to be friends with the woman.
I think
isn't
that
simply that we're just trying to have sex with
I would
them.
ask. I want to get Socrates in here in a second, but I want to ask you first, Cersei. Do you think that women have a responsibility in that, though? Right?
I would say absolutely. They're the other half
Why?
of our species.
Why?
Because if men are trying to be with women, then women have to do something to be with men. Now, what is that something? I would say reciprocate some love, care, and affection. You say why? Is that what someone just asked me?
Yeah, if men want this, why do women have to do something for them?
Because women are the other half of the equation of having a relationship.
But
Are
if
you
women
saying
don't
that
want
women should just like show up and exist, and men should just do everything for them.
Could I?
that, no, I'm saying what if women
Could I
don't
jump in
want to be in a relationship with men?
That's their prerogative. But the problem is women do want to be in relationships with men. We know this is the case because they complain about how they can't be in relationships with men.
Yeah. So this is something that we're discussing a little bit backstage, and I was making the point that I don't think it's on any individual woman to like help fix societal issues with men any more than it is to help fix any societal issues with anyone. So I actually missed the panel, so I was going to bring up the Barbie movie because that's a great jumping off point. The way that it ends, sorry, spoilers. It's been 2 weeks. If you haven't seen it, Barbie says to Ken, "Hey, like, I'm not into you romantically, but that's not even like, you shouldn't even consider that a thing in your life. Like, figure out who the hell you are. Don't define yourself by me." I think that's a great message for men. The one place that I wish that it went further is in these movements where we're talking about empowerment and helping people out who are marginalized in society. I think men need to start being included. Men who are willing and able to be part of those conversations, but in general, men need to start being more broadly included in those conversations, and not only left to kind of fend for themselves within those movements and those conversations, because men really are struggling.
Yeah, and this is actually one of the reasons why I brought up the fact that we miss how much men care about women, is because including men in that conversation is also including their motivation for why they do most of the things that they do.
Well,
So,
wait,
like-
so I would actually like big disagree with you there because
go ahead.
because that's still going back to this idea of like, okay, empowering men to like get women, and I think that's like kind of the just
I think that's
really the
issue.
wrong direction, really the wrong direction to go.
But,
It's
but
like,
this is the thing, right? Again, we go to
like empowering men to
women
complement
just
each
get
other.
women. It's not just about getting a woman. It's about all that comes with that relationship. Relationships are more complex than just me. Oh, I just have her next to me. It's having someone I can express freely how I feel when I'm feeling bad. It's someone as I heard as I came in here, having sex, being able to be vulnerable and emotional to that person also comes with the relationship with the woman.
But
That's
if
something I
you're-
can't get with my male friends. My male friends can compliment me all the live long day, but I can't
There's-
actually have that family with them.
Okay.
He's not gay. I'm not gay. We're not adopting people, so I need the woman.
You shouldn't be thinking about having a family. So first of all, so many men. This is an issue for me in my life. I was like, even though I'm a man, I was thinking about that like biological clock. How working backward from how old like I need to be to have a family, get my life to a certain place. I had to let go of that, and my life got better as I did. You stop thinking about like working backwards from some ideal.
That's
where
so
you're at.
Socrates. That's a hard ask, right?
Mhm.
To ask someone, hey, this thing you want, just stop wanting it.
No. It's not about stop wanting it, but it's stop living somebody else's dream. It's stop living your parents' dream for you. It's stop living the societal dream for you, and start figuring out who the fuck you are. No one's gonna, no one who you should want to start a family with is gonna want to start a family with you if you don't know who the fuck you are. If you're waiting for some woman to give you the validation through sex to be able to start opening up and being vulnerable, it's not impossible to bootstrap yourself into a better life that way, but it's a lot better if you can start talking to your male or female friends
I
and
agree
start
with you,
opening up to
Sale.
them.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it. You guys are having a great conversation, but I want to get some of the panelists on this as well, if I can.
Okay, yeah, so
No, yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I agree with a lot of the ideas Socrates is bringing up here. So, the idea, and I actually think this is like ultimately the gold standard for both men and women. The fact of the matter is, I am almost entirely defined by not only the caliber, but the quantity of women that I attract as a man. That's just what it is, whether I like it or not. That's just how it works. Okay? And this is very, very difficult to be able to divorce myself from, because even if I can divorce myself from it materially, like in my own feelings, people are going to judge me for this.
Other people
Front, back, and center. I'm going to be judged for this in my workplace. I'm going to be judged for this in my intimate friendships and stuff like that. That's going to happen. Fuck, I've even been judged for it, when it comes to like dating and things like that, like not having a very high body count, for instance. I've been judged for that at my age. Right, so there's problems for that men are going to face if they do not value how women see them, and there's also there's just straight up, there's a lot of media that just straight up says if you don't get women, like even on the left, that you're just like an incel loser, like just straight up. If a woman doesn't want to be in a relationship with you, there's something wrong with you.
Well, sure, you can even have a
I want to
disparaging
ask,
opinion.
just
and
real
be
quick.
called
I want
an
to
incel.
ask the women on the panel because I'm curious if this is true, because this is something I've heard from women in real life, but I don't know if it's just anecdotal. Do women, or do you specifically, if you are trying to get a relationship, do you care at all how many relationships the guy has had before you? Right? Like, so I know a lot of women who won't date someone who's never been on a date, for example. I know a lot of women who won't be in a relationship with someone who's never been in a relationship. And I'm wondering if that's your experience or not. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, for me, I just don't think being in a relationship is that valuable, and so I just couldn't possibly care. Like, my dad was a virgin when he married my mom. Like, I just don't see why it matters.
Yeah, and I think that I think men put more focus on this than women do. The whole like the low body count for you is a bad thing. Like I don't think that most women care about that, honestly. I think it's more about being emotionally well adjusted and available than it is like little things in a relationship that you don't know how to do.
Yeah,
Can
like I want
can
a person, right? Like I want a functional adult, and whether or not you've dated someone doesn't, I think, really matter in terms of functionality, unless it does, and then in that case, I think it's kind of a red flag.
Isn't it an indicator
Well,
though,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Well, no, there's like
Right.
so many
No,
people who
I
have
think
been in
it's
long-term relationships who are like still don't know how to have a good relationship.
yeah, I think it's a red flag if you
But
need
then,
to be in a relationship to be functional.
but okay, I think we would all agree with that. But like, wouldn't a past behavior people in relationships have an effect on your current relationship? Wouldn't the habits that they've built up being there have an effect on you at some point?
Yeah, but if they've broken up, odds are that relationship was not a positive one and they've picked up some negative
Yes.
habits.
Okay, so then how is it not important that this person's had past relationships?
I think
But
everything
you're
is
thinking it in
important.
the opposite way.
Yeah, like every no matter who the human is you're dating, there's going to be things that they have an advantage and disadvantage with. Like there's always going to that's why you have to be compatible and then grow together, right? That's why as an individual, like I think Socrates was saying, you have to know yourself and come to the table with these are the things I'm working on. Like the first date I had with my partner was 8 hours long and we went over every red flag. Here are my medical histories, here's my bank account, here's what I've got going on.
I'm gonna be
You know
honest
what
with
I
you, my
mean?
friend. Doesn't that seem very strange and kind of just like not normal? That you went over your bank account and everything for 8 hours? Most dates don't
Well,
last
yeah,
that long.
because I did a courting style dating. So I am an anomaly and I am encouraging people to
Hmm.
consider, are you really looking for long-term cohabitation? Are you actually just looking to
So,
get
so you
laid? Are
want
you
more
looking
people to do what you're doing then,
I
basically.
want more people to actually realize what they want from a relationship versus the script
Hmm.
they've been given. I think a lot of people are fooling themselves with like even the way you talk, no offense, I don't it sends red flags up my spine when you're like men love women. Do men love women or do
Uh,
human beings
no,
have
this is what
relationships
I
with other
love,
human
right?
beings,
This,
right?
this
Like
this is what I love. The fact that you even think that it's strange to say that men generally love women.
well,
Like
what are you
Irrelevant
saying when
just
you say
said
that?
that
Yeah,
that
when
one
you
of the
described
best
what
ways.
loving a woman was to you, it
Okay.
was all things that she could do for you to help you
No, it
validate
wasn't.
yourself, which is the
No,
whole
it wasn't.
problem.
Well, it
No, it
felt a
wasn't. I
little
just
bit
said
like
love is selfless. How is that me talking about
well,
validating
it doesn't
myself?
make sense though. Like in religious communities I've been in, they would never say this. Like, where does this come from? I've never heard someone say that except for very specific kinds of people. So,
I know
how
it's
were you
because it's
brought up?
something that I came up with. I
So it's
backward I
not
bet I
normal.
re-engineered. No, it isn't. I actually re-engineered this and thought
So
very critically
you're
about
as
it.
unique as I am in terms of that, right? You
I
date
think we might
uniquely.
be. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
so.
that's fair.
I think so.
That's fair.
I think we are pretty different.
Beautiful.
The reason why I think that it's important to come from this first moving framework is because with all the young men that I've talked to, like on my Discord or the comment sections on my videos or in my private life, some of my good friends, consistently I have not met men who said that I just want to have sex with them and leave and never talk to women again. I have not
Yeah,
consistently
but I
met
don't think
abusive
that
men.
men
Hold,
know
but
how
hold on.
to love women for the
But see,
most part.
this is the problem though, right? Because we have two issues. One, you can't dispute the fact that men have this desire. What you're disputing is that men don't know how. But then this is when we get to the other problem. You say men don't know how, but men can't get into relationships to learn. So what are they supposed to do?
So
What are they supposed to do?
But you just asked a totally different question than what we were talking about in the first
I
place.
am. So you have to accept my first premise, right? That men want to love women. Generally, if you pick any man out
I
of
don't
any
know that
crowd,
that's true. I honestly don't think
okay,
that's
so
true.
so we
I
so
don't.
first we have
I
to
want to.
prove that
I
it's
think
true.
men
Okay.
I
want
would
women
say-
to
No, no,
love
no.
them.
So yeah,
You don't
here's.
think men
I
want to
would
love
say
women?
that men want to love women the way they want to love women, not the way that women want to be loved.
Yeah. So this
That's,
was.
if that's what we're gonna go
Oh,
by,
Unfortunately, way
then
too
that
long.
there
that
you
might.
go.
Oh, that.
That's my premise.
Oh, you'd have to justify that one. You say the way women want to be loved. What does that mean?
I think this has the potential to be interesting, right? And to go a lot, but I do want to respect everyone's time, and we do have a line, so I hate to cut this off.
That's
Can I
true.
just make a quick final
So here's the thing.
comment? Yeah.
Can I get some? First of all, me and Irrelevant, we should chat more. You're cool, dude. We've chatted before.
Yeah, I recognize
I
it.
want to debate everyone here though. So
We can debate.
I
We
need
can set
Tegma,
up
I
a
need
dog
Booth, I
pile.
need Brittany.
Xerxes versus the Warriors.
Irrelevant, you're cool as hell, man. We disagree, but you're cool. You can come too. Look, let's bring it back. Because I got some thoughts, man. I got some heat. So
We can.
Okay.
We
if
can,
I need to
I
message
can,
you guys, I will.
yeah.
Yep. Message me.
We can do that. Okay,
Right.
thanks, Socrates. You guys, okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Quick final thought. I don't think men love women. I don't think it makes sense to say a category of person loves another category of person. I think you can fall in love with a particular person. And people who go into a relationship saying like, I have like I love this type of person, that's called a fantasy. And it's something that's important to let go of when you're going into a relationship, when you're in a relationship. and because it'll blind you to the person that you're with, and you won't be able to love them who you are if you're obsessed with a fantasy. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Amen.
You have a great one,
Always a
Socrates.
pleasure,
All right,
and
good
we'll
seeing
have you on again soon. Okay, let's bring in the last two. I think be the last two. So let's see who we got. Big Smoke. Okay,
Big Smoke.
and Tubi.
Oop.
Let's get Tubi in here. You're live, gang. Hello. Oh no, Tubi's deafened. Oh, there he goes. He can hear us. What you got for us, gang?
Hi. Do you mind if I don't come up?
It's Collins. You're fine. What do you got?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I know Brittany a little, so I want to come off with that. But
Hey.
kind of the biggest issue for me was that I mean, we had some men on the panel here, yet I didn't feel like the biggest topic, the main topic, was even touched on properly, in the sense that none of you actually truly talked about uh, how you engage with your own feelings of loneliness, like how you
So-
process it. And I think that's the key, without actually talking about that, which is the actual concern. I
Yeah.
don't think there's any progress.
No, I think that's very valid. Now, at least from my perspective, I have a very unique relationship with it because, like I said, I don't. From my perspective, I haven't been lonely in 11 years, and the reason why I haven't is because I believe I've exercised some of the things that we talked about on this panel. I fostered a very intimate friendship with a lot of the people I grew up with, and I keep in contact with. You know, we've shared incredibly personal details about each other. We've laughed, we've cried together, and stuff like that. And in those moments, I definitely felt closer to them. They've expressed that they felt closer to me, so I fostered that. So independent of even a romantic relationship, because the vast majority of my adult life I haven't been in romantic relationships, I haven't been lonely. So I personally, I guess beat the odds on that by really making a deliberate effort to find specific moments where I knew my friends would be open to having those kinds of conversations with me, and really making sure that they felt heard and I could express myself in those moments.
Well, if we are sharing, I'll share a little bit. I'll get a little personal, get a little intimate with all of you. All right. I have never felt more lonely than I have being a content creator in this space. The ways we deal with each other and interact with each other have been the most isolating experience I think I've ever felt in any workplace or environment that I've been in. You learn very quickly that the people who you think are friendly to you are not your friends. You are content. You are content. And that kind of depersonification, this dehumanization that happens within this space, being made into content because it makes money, and you do it to yourself too, right? So I am complicit in my own loneliness, right? Because I make myself into content, and it can be devastating. How I've
Can I
dealt
just go
with
to the
that
bathroom?
is to kind of retreat from a lot of the groups I was with in this space, and to focus on the ones that did not treat me like that. But it has been a process, and it's something I'm going through. So I think that,
No.
at least on a personal experience, has been how I've dealt with loneliness, is to isolate myself from the groups that were making me feel like not a person, if that makes sense. But yeah, if anyone else has thoughts on this, feel free to share, and then we'll get to Tubi's question.
I have a bit of thoughts on how
Please.
truly kind of even radically different males' loneliness is, broadly speaking, compared to women's. In the sense that I feel like men have a bit of different social needs, and even when a lonely man like expresses it, it's not uncommon for him to get this response of like get in touch with your feminine side in a way. But perhaps men like ultimately don't actually desire that. Uh, I mean, to some extent, you have to, as a man, relate to other men emotionally, and I mean that's a must to be healthy. But look at what's happening online. Most men that are socializing, um, sorry, I had a glitch.
All good.
Most men that
Okay.
are socializing online, it's happening through games. So they're not actually conversing. They're not actually getting intimate.
That is it. That is a point, right? That we often have instead of actual relationships with other men, we have gamer buddies or hobby buddies, right? Hobbyists and things like that. So I understand. Like back when I had board game groups, there were people who I was friends with and friendly with in the board game groups, but they weren't my friends, right? That's all we did is play board games. We didn't do anything else. But I did make some people that I met through these board game groups into actual friends, but that involved doing other things outside of the one hobby in which we met. But I want to give some Tubi here some space because he's on here, and he had some thoughts in chat. So I'm wondering if you want to voice those and play. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I didn't see why people were upset at all about what Brittany was saying. I feel like everyone gets to the point that Brittany does at some point. I think when you're really young and you're dating people, you do this thing where you try to fit other people, you try to mold other people to your sensibilities. And some people, they're particularly compliant and they'll fit your sensibilities. I don't think that's a recipe for success. I don't, you guys phrase it kind of weirdly where you're like, oh, well, it sounds like you have a list or you're like vetting people. Okay, whether you want to be as explicit about it as Brittany is or not, everyone is doing that when you're dating someone. There's never a point when you're dating somebody and you're not vetting them. I'm sorry if that's like news to anyone. That's what people do when they date people. You're making a decision whether you want to continue spending potentially the rest of your life with this person. So this is not like matter of science. This is a matter of people's subjective sensibilities. So you have, in my opinion, total liberty to be as selfish as you want about those things. And I think the only time, like when you said, you run into a problem is if you're going to have particular standards and stick to those things and be critical and harsh, have a very firm stance on that, then you have to be okay with delaying, instant gratification because you cannot have particularly strict standards about what you're going to date and how tall they have to be, how, in terms of hotness, how hot they have to be, what they have to care about, what their hobbies are, etc. And expect that you're going to find that person instantaneously. It's just not how that's
Do
going to
you,
work.
just to ask, do you think that there is anything that you can have as a checklist or a deal breaker or a vetting process that would probably be unhealthy that most people should probably not have as part of their checklist? Do you think there's any kind of criteria that perhaps people should not be judging people or their potential partners on?
That they, I don't. That's a weird way to phrase that. I can comment on whether I think
Well, for
something
example, do you
is more
think
or less likely to
they,
happen.
sure, do you think that it is reasonable, just to be more clear and be more specific,
Why does it? But
for
to me, why does it
someone who
matter?
makes,
Why does it matter if it's reasonable to you?
well, reasonable in general?
Like if Brittany came to you and told you that she wants a guy who makes $900,000 a year, like she said, whether that's reasonable to me or you, to me, is insignificant.
I
That's what she
think that
wants.
it does have kind of an influential effect, especially when influencers, right, put out their standards. It can make people want to emulate and think they should emulate these standards, and thinking these are the standards like Boots alluded to earlier. Like society makes us think we want these things when we probably shouldn't. I think there absolutely can be standards that are pushed on that we should push back against. I think, for example, the body count standard. I think that generally we should push back against using body count as a standard to judge women. I don't know. That's just me,
Okay. Yeah, but say Brittany wanted a guy. I don't want to pick on Brittany. Say Ahrelevant. Say this guy wanted a woman who was particularly experienced, she had a high body count. Now, him making that choice is because, say, he's like a super popular streamer and he said that out loud. I still don't think that that means, I could say that that's unreasonable, but again, like, who cares? That's what he wants. He's not wrong for wanting that. He can't control the idiocy of other people. Sure, he can set precedent with his choices or his preferences. Why is that his responsibility? Again, we're not talking about like science or anything like that. We're talking about
I feel like
the
I'm
subjective
talking
desires
about
of an individual.
loneliness, and the more standards that you have, like the more barriers that you put in your way, like you're being
In whose way?
Well,
And
there's
we're
a
talking
certain
about what
pickiness
Ahrelevant
that's really
wants.
good, and there's
Other
certain
barriers are
things that you can kind of
self-imposed.
compromise on.
Well,
No, but those barriers are self-imposed. Ahrelevant, by him voicing what he wants, he's
Okay,
not
so
forcing
here,
you
if
to do it.
Ahrelevant, and I'm sorry to pick on you, Ahrelevant, but if Ahrelevant comes out to me and says, "Yo, I want someone who looks like Margot Robbie. I want them to make I want them to make
He's got the pass.
at
He's got the
least
pass.
500K. I want them to they need to be able to cook to my specifications. They need to be able to do. This is the kind of woman I want." And then, man, I'm so lonely.
God, why am I
No,
alone?
like, why can't I find a woman?
Shit.
At what point is it appropriate to say, hey, buddy, friend, maybe your standards are dog shit.
Fuck you, Wick.
You can always, but hold on. You can always tell him that whether he's exhausted of waiting or not. But the fact that he's, but to me, it's not really important that you told him that. He tells himself that by saying, "Man, I sure am lonely." And if at some point, if he feels lonely enough, he will modify what his expectations are.
Okay, I have three fast
But
points.
you don't have to be lonely for your
comment on that.
expectations to be talked. Like your expectations can be rewarded, and it can still be something that's really like unhealthy. Like
Yeah,
if I
correct.
say that I only want to date like a certain race, that's something that's unhealthy. Like that's not something that like
Why?
it's my preference or whatever.
Why
but,
is
like,
that?
that's
Wait,
not
why
something
is
that
that
should be rewarded.
inherently unhealthy? You realize most people who date, they do that, and they're not.
Well, I don't think most
Okay,
people
now I have 4
would
points.
only date a certain race. I think most people only date within their race. But yeah.
Yeah, most people tend to date within the race, but also some people make an intentional choice about that, and they end up in
and that's
a
bad.
relationship.
That's not good.
Can I say something about how I see my own
Why?
loneliness?
Wait, why? Why? Wait. Why is it bad that you want to? First of all, race is a proxy for other things, right? Race is a proxy for your
Is it?
culture. What
Is
kind
it
of food
though?
you eat, your culture, your sense of humor, what kind of music
It
you
can
like.
be.
Your
Race,
culture. You're saying I
isn't
want to date
necessary-
somebody with the same skin color as I do.
Listen, I met
Okay,
a...
no. First, no. That's totally no. That's not what you said. You said you want to date someone who is the same race as you, and I do think race is a proxy for those other things.
Okay, so...
Yeah, they're the same skin color as you.
Yeah, but I didn't say I
but
want to
think
date
they
somebody with the
relate
same
more to that
culture.
other stuff.
I love this. Okay, so some quick points. I think what really matters is why. Any of these things, why do you do any of these criteria, okay? So if I'm over here saying I want a Margot Robbie type, and the answer to why is because I fucking deserve it, I'm obviously, like, I mean, look at me, like, I deserve everything the fuck I want. Like, fuck you for doing whatever, right? Imagine being a woman and not wanting this, right? It's like, okay, maybe get a little bit of an ego check, right? So the reason why you want anything is definitely contributing towards certain things. And of course, there's things we can all agree on that would be toxic for anybody to want. Something like just, I don't know, let's say there's a guy who's really into like actually psycho women or something like that because they hear like, oh yeah,
Okay,
crazy
that doesn't
shit
count.
hits.
Okay,
Okay, sure,
that
yes,
doesn't count,
yes, I
We're
understand.
not talking about murderers
I-
or
I-
anything. They're trying to say like it's unreasonable for you to want somebody
Yeah,
who has a certain amount of
I'm getting
money,
there.
for you to want to date a particular race.
Yep,
We're not
and
saying-
so and then this gets me to
race doesn't mean, but date a particular race doesn't mean that they're racist.
I don't
Okay,
want to
we're
want. I
not
don't want to
talking
date
about
a.
those cases. That's
Well, I'm
obvious.
almost
If I
there,
said, I don't want to date. I don't want to date a black woman, under any circumstances. Do you think that's
So,
at least
okay,
not a
but what is the
little weird?
You should be forced to date a black woman?
Okay, no,
What is the other option? You
the
you
reason.
should
No, but
have
it's something you
access
have to question. Why?
It's
don't
why
you?
exactly?
Do you have
Why
any, like-
don't you want to date a black woman? The reason why is it's
What if
not
he
going
just doesn't want to?
What do you mean?
There's
There
not
has
an
to be a
issue.
reason
He just
why. There
doesn't
has
want
to be a
everybody
reason
doing
why.
something for a reason.
Yeah, you don't just do things for no reason. There has to be an underlying reason why. Maybe it gives you an icky feeling, and you got to figure out. To Brittany's subject,
oh my
why
God.
does it give you an
This is what I'm talking about.
icky feeling? Introspect
This is
about
what I'm
that.
talking about. Racism is wrong. You guys are not saying something profound. Racism is wrong. Okay, murder is wrong. So you can't want. So
Okay,
if
but
we're
you're
going to
saying
talk
it's
about the
okay.
things that you can't
No.
want in dating.
Okay.
Yes, it's bad for you to date someone who's a murderer. It's bad for you to date someone exclusively because they're not this other color. Yes, that's wrong. That's not profound.
So if somebody walks up, sorry, if somebody's telling me I'm sorry,
Irrelevant. Go ahead.
Okay.
Irrelevant.
If somebody's telling me the reason why they're dating they primarily want to date black women, let's say me, I'm a black man. If I want to primarily date black women, it's because of like a similar culture thing. That could be fine. But if I find a white woman or Hispanic woman or Asian woman that partakes in that culture, very deep in that culture, like there's a plethora of women who aren't just black, and I'm closed off to that, maybe I should look into why I'm refusing these women. Because if it is for a cultural reason, I should be open to many different races of women. So it's when we're talking about a preference, you can talk about preference in relation to culture and things like that, but there's also people who are outside of that race who do participate in those cultural activities. It happens all the time. Cultural exchange is incredibly normal. To talk to what Tegma was saying earlier, to get my second point, which was that there is absolutely a point where you're talking about being lonely and things like that, but you set up so many barriers for yourself that you're like going and you're shooting yourself in the foot. You know, maybe you're putting too many barriers in incorrect places. Maybe you just don't understand yourself well enough and things like that. But there's also an issue where you need to put up a specific amount of barriers because you don't want to get in a relationship with just about anybody, because that can be more isolating than being single. That can make you feel more constricted and more constrained than being single, because now you're in a relationship that you are probably going to have to end. That can be very messy. Maybe you don't know how to do that and things like that, and you're like screwed. You have to figure out how to do that, then go back onto the market, then find somebody to be able to satisfy that situation, when at the start you could have just been a little bit more selective and maybe found somebody to begin with. So yeah, I think Tegma's point was I believe you said that, you know, you don't want to step over the line where you're too picky and things like that, and that's a difficult situation to understand. Like, how am I being too picky? Am I not being too picky? And to what Wick said, okay, finding other people that you trust, friends and things like that, to be able to vet you and audit your behavior of like, hey man, am I being too picky? Maybe you are. Let me tell you why. Having people that you can rely on and depend on to keep you in check, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I recommend it.
Okay, I just want to say, like, wants and needs are different, okay? I don't think there's a thing as being, like, too picky. I think the why you're picky is important. Like Ahrelevant said, like, it's all about the why. But I think people get afraid that if women want men who make $900,000 a year, well, they're never going to pick me. And then I'm never going to get a wife, because if she would just lower her standards, she would pick me. She's not going to pick you, bro. She was never going to pick you. She's not even going to pick herself by having those standards. And at the same time, standards and preferences for selfish, monetary, superficial bullshit have nothing to do with values. What I'm saying is, like, if I'm on a date and a guy goes, I don't date black women, I'm like, cool, thanks for the date, next date, right? It's easy. It's the greatest thing I've ever heard come out of someone's mouth, because I know you're not my person. Next person, right? Like, that's easy for me. But in terms of values, when I say, like, I want someone who shares my values, this is a values thing, right? If you're not introspective enough to ask yourself why you don't want to date black women, you're not even up to standard, my friend. Like, move on, right? So again, this is very, very, like, I feel like we're talking about, like, why do people do, who cares who does it? I don't care. I just want to know if you're confident, you know who you are, you've spent the time knowing to, like, learning yourself, and if you're able to be with somebody like me, because all I do is introspect. It's very tedious, and it can be very exhausting for people, because everything you do, I'll be like, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? And then we're going to sit there and figure it out for hours. You know how hard that is for people? Which is why my person is perfect for me, because all he wants to do is do that too.
Could I
right?
say something about men? Which
Yes.
I think...
I can't generalize with you, right? You know me. You know my work, Big Smoke. I can't generalize with you, but go ahead.
I really think it's an interesting thought. I see it in me. I see it in virtually every man I know. how it's different compared to women for us generally is like, you know how most young people in general, like, we're not doing that great in certain regards, especially in certain areas like employment, education, all of these things, housing, all of these things. And when young women face these issues, they are far more likely to talk to one another and to even like dump all of that, you know, fuckery, what's going on in their lives, and to like emotionally relate to one another that way through even the bad things that are going on. And it even makes them closer, like it helps the friendship. But I personally, and none of my guy friends, are comfortable to ever talk to another guy if we're not doing that well, like financially or housing or something. We just want to shut the fuck in, because it kind of destroys our kind of identity as a man.
For sure, I
Like,
agree with you.
as
I see
men,
that
for us,
struggle.
like we kind of have to prove our masculinity all the time, especially with these things, or else we feel kind of less than and kind
Yeah.
of not deserving even a conversation
Just
about it.
real quick.
For sure. Do men have a goal? Like you guys are saying it right now. Have you ever thought about like my brothers do support systems for boys, like for men at church? They have like support groups. My brothers lead them. Like that's their version of doing it in their religious bubble. Like have you guys thought about doing something like that? And then that's what girls do. Because you guys are talking about a cultural shift, which starts with people, and that's very hard to do.
Well, I think that there's a lot at play here, but first of all, let's $5 from Marius Beal to ask: is there any correlation between the amount of options between the genders and how their loneliness manifests? And that's an interesting question that I would like to get to. But I think to speak to the friendship aspect of things, I think that one of the issues we have is a lack of communal infrastructure, a destruction of communal infrastructure that we used to have and participate in. No one goes to the malls anymore. No one goes to these public places anymore. We don't hang out in real life anymore. And there is a substantive difference, right? I know you're an outlier, Brittany, but most people act differently in life, right? In face-to-face interactions than they do online. I think that online interactions are largely empty calories. We feel like we are getting this need met, but it's empty calories. It's filling our bellies, but we're getting very little out of it, caloric wise. I think that the lack of attendance at churches, the going away from religion and things like that, has contributed to this. The lack of any kind of communal infrastructure.
But like, why didn't you do it though? That's what I'm confused about. Like,
Well, why don't we put together communal infrastructure? If I was a
they're there
mayor
though. Like
or
in
a
Seattle, it's all communal stuff. Like when I was in Seattle, I was like, oh my gosh, everything is a community. Everything is like the builder community, the like burner community, the polyamory community. Like
Right, like the past generations, the youth made those structures, the youth made groups, and the youth made hobbies, and all of these. But our generation, well, we actually, I mean, we suffer a lot from it, but ultimately, in a way, masochistically, we would rather choose this online kind of virtual life rather than putting in the effort of doing something substantial and meaningful in real life, because we have kind of atomized into these very fragmented humans who no wonder have like a million mental health issues.
Go ahead.
I don't think that it's as by choice as you're saying. I think a lot of this was like COVID, and we haven't really recovered from this like isolation that we had in COVID. I want to say that like Australia has a thing called like men's sheds. I don't know if it's a thing in America, but it's like a non-profit public thing where they just build like sheds, and they all have different things. Like some of them will be like shops or like mechanic stuff, and like guys will just come and hang out there and do their stuff. They can use all the shit for free. That's helped a lot of at least older men's loneliness. But they have found that at least in Australia, the more traditionally masculine men have the highest rates of suicidality and also highest rates of loneliness, because obviously those correlate. So that unwillingness to seek out others who you can relate to it's a self-limiting thing. So I know it's really fucking hard to do that when it's like it seems a lot easier to just like hang out with people when you're playing a game. Even fucking Elliot Rodger talked about this in his manifesto, about how originally like playing games became like a way to interact with people, but it just became a way for him to re- contain his own loneliness, and to just keep making himself not go outside and interact with people.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. I mean, as the king neat, all right, sitting inside all day playing video games all day, 16 hours a day, that's light work. Okay, I gotta say, the reason why we're sitting inside all day, that shit bangs, okay? Real life sucks, okay? The video games are just better. That shit is, I'm gonna keep it a buck. Binging Netflix, that shit is just built different. It is just better, okay? So the problem is with all this communal infrastructure, you can build as many goddamn churches as you want. That shit doesn't hit like Stranger Things at 3 a.m., okay? That shit doesn't hit that way.
You never been to the arcade? Like,
I've been to an arcade. I have been.
Arcades? Those things are banging. I used to go there all the time. They had like the skee ball. They had like the fucking video games, the Street Fighter, and like the old school like joystick Street Fighter. I don't know, man. Like,
hey, listen, some people, yeah, I think that's going to be like a process for a lot of people who, depending on what they do, they might gravitate towards more communal spaces that are like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're playing video games, all right, maybe go to an arcade. You can rub some shoulders with some like-minded folks, and stuff like that. Don't think like, oh yeah, I'm playing video games, I'm just going to go to church, and then all of a sudden it's going to like change the way that I look at it, because it's going to feel the same.
An example of just a place where people.
Of course, yeah. I'm not trying to drill that down as like a bad suggestion. Not at all. A church can be a very great place for people to rub shoulders with people and socialize quite naturally. But like what I'm saying is, based on what you do and that you're trying to like not spend time doing, that's isolating you, and find a communal activity that's somewhat similar. So that way you're not like, going from playing video games to like, I don't know, quilting with a bunch of people, and then you're wondering, oh well, why, I just don't know why I'm not getting a similar effect out of this. Like, you know what I'm saying? Get something that hits a similar way.
Okay, gang. We have come up to the top of the hour. Thank you, all of you, for coming by today. It has been a pleasure having this conversation. Hopefully, even though it was fruitless, as some might say, it was still entertaining. Gang, if you like the content, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're following this on Kick or Twitch, hit the follow button, throw me some subs, throw me some bits. It would really help. What we got coming up? Tomorrow, Collins, 6 o'clock Wednesday, I'm having people on to tell me why I am a terrible leftist, why that we shouldn't criticize the left, and why I overly criticize the left. We're going to have Josiah, we're going to have Daedalus Media, we're going to have Portland is Burning, we're going to have a few people on to take me to task. So tune in, it'll be fun. Yeah, that's what we got, and we're going to rate out. Are you still going to stream it after this, Ahrelevant, or are you done?
Yeah, I'll probably play some games and stuff.
I'll throw you a raid, and yeah.
Okay. Wait, is it actually, or is it really going to be about whether or not... Yes,
they were big mad, and I'll read the tweet I made.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of annoyed.
Wait, are you a leftist, Wick?
I am progressive, if that counts.
Okay.
I consider myself progressive, but everyone's saying no.
Is it really criticize? Is that so really
this is all I said. This is all I said. It was a response to a tweet Destiny made about how the right doesn't advocate for empathy. I agree, and I said, let me find it. Here we are. I said, we are in a period where everyone is viewing those on the other side not only as political opponents, but an apocalyptic threat and an enemy to all that is good and holy. Everyone just needs to stop treating everyone else as inhuman, left, right, and center. People are big mad about that. I'm being taken to the task like, well, how dare you say this when Trump is destroying America, right? Like,
okay.
So that's the thing we'll be arguing on Wednesday.
All right.
We'll rate out, and we'll see when we see you. Bye.
All right. Much love.
Thanks for having me, Wick. Appreciate you.
Appreciate
Bye. Love talking to you again, Brittany.
Hopefully we'll do it again
Bye.
soon.
Talk to you soon, hopefully.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye. Sweet.